Games Lightbringer presents The Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire. Signs and Portals, Part 2. Sansa Locked in Ice. Live podcast featuring special guest Maester Merry. Lucifer Games Lightbringer presents
This is the one we wanted.
The Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire. Signs and Portals, Part 1.
Part 1, yes, Part 1 comes before Part 2.
Veil of Frozen Tears. Live podcast featuring special guest Maester Merry.
Okay, there we go. 2 intros for the price of 1, and you are getting 2 podcasts for the price of 1 today. We did it a little backwards, but yes, there we go. You got both intros, so, there it is. You go ahead and unmute yourself there, Maester Merry.
Hello!
Hello, Maester Merry. Hello, chat. We've got lots of fake white hair today, lots of snowy locks. Thanks for coming on, Maester Merry. I appreciate this so much.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and really hoping to not eat too much fake white hair today.
Yeah, and I'm already beard tape. Guys, I'm not going to keep the beard on for this whole thing. It doesn't really sound good when I talk through the beard. This is purely for intro punch for you guys. So let me go ahead and... Yeah, I know. You want me to keep it on, but, we got to have it sound good, so... You might get Rhaegar Barbarian. Ugh. Or I'll tell you what. We'll do just the snowy hair. There we go. And get those antlers on. And there we go. Okay. Now we're going. And, oh, yeah, headphones. That would be good. So I can hear Maester Merry. Oh, man. This isn't happening. Sorry, I'm low on patience today, guys. Low on patience. I'll tell you what. There. Now we're festive.
Yay!
Yeah. Let me just see if I can. There we go. Ta-da! All right. Hey, guys. Thanks for coming. Everyone. And today we are going to do more live podcasting, meaning we have the new... No, I'm not taking off my shirt. Come on now. That's totally uncalled for. In any case, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a live podcasting, which means the scripted episode, not live Q&A, not between 2 Weirwoods, not Sanrixian live drawing. That'll be next week on the follow-up Q&A. But we are going to do new scripted podcasts and a whole new series. So it's going to be really cool, tons of information. But before we get into any of that, we have to welcome our guest to the show. Maester Merry, you are not only a mythical astronomy patron, not only a friend of mine, IRL in the real, you are also the proud owner of a brand new YouTube channel. So tell everyone what that's called and what it's about.
Yeah, my YouTube channel is called Up From Under Winterfell. Right now, I am working on a series of essays exploring the magic and history of Braavos. And I've got the first 2 essays recorded and posted up on that channel. The next one should be up sometime next week. Once I'm done with that series of Braavos essays, I will move on to some other exciting, likely magical topic, or perhaps law-oriented topic, which has been a topic that a few people have requested. And I'm excited. Mainly it was inspired because ULML asked me to record some of my essays to make it easier to listen to And one of the things that's so great about this fandom is that people are extremely supportive. And I feel like it's been a really awesome opportunity to get to give something back to this community.
Awesome. Yeah, it comes from pure laziness, so not laziness, but just being really fucking busy on my part. I have a regular job, and this is basically a full-time job, and I also have a wife and parents, and I just, like everybody is, I'm super busy, and it's really, really hard to read anything. I have to drive on my commute, so I don't have like a bus ride to read anything on. So I feel bad. There's a lot of my friends that have written stuff, and I'm not up to date on all of them. So I just kind of threw it out there. I was like, guys, hook me up, because I started doing this podcast because I was writing essays that were too long for people to read on westeros.org. And I was like, well, I can podcast. I should just make a podcast to make it easier. So yeah, I threw it back, and Mary was the first one to be like, okay, bet. And she threw down and made a YouTube channel, and now we're talking about Bravos. So yeah, if you guys haven't checked out that video, it is the Up From Under Winterfell YouTube channel, and there's actually two. And I know a little bit behind the scenes of what Mary's thinking here, and I know she's just getting started. So yes, I will say that they make a good companion for the Weirwood Goddess series, where we went to Bravos and checked out some of Arya's symbolism there. So yeah, we got some links in the chat. Thank you, Disputed Lands, Amanda, Crowfood's daughter, dropping the link. So we've got a couple of super chats kicking things off. Thanks, guys. Colin VW. He says, to the end of an already wonderful day, giving himself away as being in Europe. Hey there, Europe. Lights out. Good luck to LML and Mary. Thanks, Colin. Stephen Stark with the ceremonial 666 super chat. Horns up. Hit the like button, everyone. Thank you. Yes, Sundays I'm taking over Sundays. I'm pretty much staking it out. Sunday at 3 Eastern. That's my time. And Sanrixian, the Hand of the Dragon. Thanks, Sandra. You didn't have to, but you did. Thanks for the support. Thanks for the mojo. And we've got many friends and esteemed guests in the chat, including Drunk, A Song of Ice and Fire History, a.k.a. Chloe, host of the new podcast Girls Gone Canon, who was on Between Two Weirwoods recently. Yes, they just did a nice episode with Brendan Beefish, and that was a ton of fun. They sang together. That's all I'm going to say. There was live singing. All right. So, Maester Merry, tell me, what's, besides me, sort of urging you to make a YouTube channel, what led you to write about Bravos? What is it about Bravos that calls and sings out to you?
Well, it's interesting you're asking this on your Veil episode, because a lot of it is that the same symbolism, I think, that is at play in the Veil is at play in Bravos. And that's that there's a ton of icy moon symbolism. There's also a lot of gray mist. Shout out to Chloe on that one, too. It's a place that has a lot of those natural elements that I think George R. R. Martin uses to hint at magic. And what got me going was that in Bravos, you not only have the symbolism that you have in places like the Veil, you also have the weird Hall of Faces, strange face-changing magic, plus the Titan of Bravos, which maybe, spoiler alert, for my first video, is totally made out of something similar to, if not actually carved entirely out of sea stone. So there's a bunch of these really interesting clues to magical elements that we know George R. R. Martin uses. And I think that makes for an extremely rich place to look at. Also, Arya's freaking awesome. So I love spending time reading her chapters.
Nice. Yeah, the House of Black and White is, as far as symbolism goes, it's like an open book to me. It calls out all kinds of cool green seer symbolism, and we're going to go back there and mine some more out of that. But the thing that vexes me is, what the hell are the Faceless Men doing? Is it magic? Is it weird, like Qyburn, like pseudoscience, which seems to be a thing? Is it like magic that we're familiar with? Is it like, or is it some magic that we're not familiar with? Is there a connection to the Boltons and their whole tradition of peeling people and stuff? So yeah, what do you? I mean,
What do
do
I
you
think?
have like? Yeah, do you have a quick take on that? I mean,
my
geez.
quick take is that I think the person that it's most similar to is someone like Merry Maester. So we know that Merry Maester uses a bunch of different types of magic. Also, perhaps similar to Melisandre. It's someone that has studied a bunch of different types of magic and then amalgamated a bunch of different magical artifacts. So I think Qyburn's also probably a pretty good example too. So if you combine Merry Maester and the creepiness that is Qyburn, I think you're awfully close to the kind of things that are at foot in the House of Black and White. And the distinction I use in my essay is that you can use magical artifacts and magical locations without necessarily being a greenseer or someone like Melisandre, who is directly has the fire inside her. So I think that they're using artifacts of magic that have been created by other people, but that they don't necessarily have magic in their blood themselves.
Okay, that's a really interesting answer. That makes a lot of sense. And you could almost imagine like a group of people finding glass candles in the future and then setting up like a crow network of like communication around Westeros with the glass candles. They might not be Valyrians. They may not understand dragons, but maybe they figured out how to work the glass candles and then they were sort of repurposing them, for a new thing. So that actually makes a ton of sense. I love that answer.
Well, I'm glad, and I love the comparison to glass candles. Even someone like Marwyn the Mage is following in those kind of same footsteps.
Exactly right. He's not a Valyrian, but just through studying and sort of approaching it from the right mindset, he's figured out how to make it work. And obviously magic's come back into the world, and that is a key to it too. So yeah, cool. That's a really cool answer. I wonder... It really so what about the Bolton thing? Do you think there is a connection to the flaying that the Boltons do?
I really don't think so. But in large part just because we don't know, we don't really have any evidence that the Bolton's flaying is connected to them preserving or using faces. And I'm not a big subscriber into like the Bolton vampire-y thing. So I could maybe be persuaded if I was more into that line of theory, but I'm just not. That's not to say that I couldn't be convinced, but I haven't really looked at it from that angle.
That's cool. Yeah, it's probably, I tend to think it's a symbolic parallel where they're doing, similar things, and there's the symbolism happening. But there, if you do like Bolton, which is sort of like it makes just enough sense to like dismiss out of hand, even though it's a little far-fetched. Like we have been shown body snatching, so it is technically possible given the mechanisms of the magic that were shown in the books, which is sort of a big criteria for me. Like I think that George always gives us small examples of the bigger magic that he's going to show us later. Yeah, it's probably just a symbolic parallel. But yeah, I like I said, the House of Black and White and the whole face thing is one of those really mysterious things that's always vexed me. So I look forward to seeing where you take the series for sure. And Stormy 4400 comes in with a super chat saying, because you have finally gotten to a Veil chapter, which I've been looking forward to for a while. Yes, a lot of people have been looking forward to this. There's lots of anticipation. And Sean E with the 420 super chat, getting the party started early. Thank you, Sean. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get this thing started. And yes, let's do this. So let me just arrange my windows in the manner which is most pleasing to the eye. Okay. Yeah, get Sansa hype time for show. Okay, well, here we are, folks. Arrived at the Vale of Arryn at last. It's an ice moon symbol so massive and spectacular that I simply had to save it for its own day in the sun. The Vale has the entire vocabulary of the ice moon on display, and so I've been tempted to bring it up many times throughout the Moons of Ice and Fire series and the Blood of the Other series, but it so quickly becomes a new section and blows up my current train of thought that I usually end up cutting it. So now it's basically all piled up high like a mountain of snow. and now it's time to trigger an avalanche of icy moon symbolism. There's another reason I set aside the lovely and surprisingly lively Vale of Arryn and all the wondrous symbolism that goes on there, which is that it brings up a whole new topic that is central to the mysteries that we've been pursuing thus far. What topic is this? Well, it's the title of the new series, Signs and Portals. The name is a continuation of my little joke of aping the title of famous books in Planetosi lore. First, we had the Bloodstone Compendium to mime Colloquo Votar's Jade Compendium. And of course, Signs and Portents is the name of the book, which supposedly contains all the prophecies by Daenys the Dreamer Targaryen, who foresaw the doom, again, supposedly, 12 years before it happened, enabling the Targaryens to relocate to Dragonstone and become the only living Valyrian-blooded family in possession of dragons in the world. How convenient. Like I said, I always cast a little bit of a suspicious eye on that one. Seems like a very convenient story. I'm very open to the idea that the Valyrians helped engineer the Doom so that they'd be the only dragon riders, but we'll talk about that sort of stuff another day. What we are looking for today, and what I've been building up to for quite a while now, is the idea of portals. So we're going to be looking for signs of portals. They are everywhere, and we've actually been talking about them for a while now, beating around the proverbial burning bush, if you will. The so-called Weirwood net is certainly a kind of portal which green seers can use to project their consciousness across time and space. Anytime someone dies and comes back from death, that's going to involve portal symbolism too. And I don't want you to think that we're talking about portals just because they're magic and fun, and I've just sort of chosen them for a topic. I think you longtime mythical astronomers know that I'm always following a few main threads of symbolism and meaning and building upon past ideas and discoveries to sort of feel our way around in the dark and discover the secrets that Martin wants to keep hidden. Well, mostly hidden. These lines of research mostly dictate the topic, and in that, I'm always writing about whatever I feel needs to come next based on what we've learned so far. Now, the three main threads that we've followed up to this point are the Technicolor Trident Trio, R, G, and B. That's right, Roy G. Biv, the man with the multicolor, multi-pronged eating utensil, by which I mean fire magic, ice magic, and green seer magic. Dragons, others, and weirwoods. Now, we started with quite a lot about dragons, of course, in 5 of the Bloodstone Compendium episodes, which were dedicated to dragons: Azor Ahai, the Long Night Disaster, the Truth of the Sword known as Lightbringer, and so on. You guys know what the deal is there. Then in Sacred Order of Green Zombies, we delved into the hidden virtues of zombiehood, which seems to mostly tie to green seer and weirwood magic, but also seems to incorporate ice magic. In the case of Cold Hands, and fire magic, as with the symbolism and foreshadowing of the Night's Watch as fire wights. Now, a lot of the Green Man folklore in the Green Zombie series is also good general background for understanding the Green Seers, the Children of the Forest, and House Stark's role as the King of Winter, which, spoiler alert, charges him with self-sacrificial immolation to bring the spring. Then I had a true bolt of lightning brainwave, probably one of the biggest since my original discovery of moon meteors, and that was the idea of Azor Ahai being a green seer. Or perhaps we should say, someone who entered the Weirwood net. Now, Ravenous Reader, who's in the chat today, hey Raven Salix, likes to say that I put the fire in the tree. And what we're talking about here is Weirwood Compendium 1, the Grey King and the Sea Dragon. It's an accurate but unfortunately misleading name for an essay which probably should have been called Caps Lock, OMG, Azor Ahai was a mother effing green seer, y'all. It's simply a quirk of the fact that the Ironborn mythology just so happens to be the key to understanding how Lightbringer and Moon Meteor magic and Weirwood and Green Seer magic are in fact linked to one another as two sides of the Fire of the Gods coin, which I imagine as a gold coin with one side having a Garth head, like the pre-Targaryen gold coins had, and the other with a Targaryen dragon, such as all the post-conquest gold coins had. There you go. After the Grey King and the Sea Dragon episode, the rest of the Weirwood Compendium series mostly explored Green Seer and Weirwood connections and the related lore that Martin used to craft all those things, although we continue to see signs of Azor Ahai running around inside the Weirwood net, nowhere more so than in Weirwood Compendium 4, In a Grove of Ash, where we caught him red-handed in the act of going into the trees. In a Grove of Ash really tied together two of the three branches of the story, fire magic and the Weirwood magic. Now, I'm not even going to begin to summarize that episode. That would be a good one to re-listen to if you don't remember it well. In fact, that's kind of where this introduction is going. To really get the Signs and Portals series, you kind of need to catch up on any of the back episodes that you haven't listened to. The scripted episodes I'm talking about, not necessarily all the live streams. I wrote the Moons of Ice and Fire series to be accessible for anyone who simply knows my basic moon meteor theory. But at this point, we're basically ready to begin tying everything together like never before. And for that to work, it's necessary to understand what we've uncovered so far and what we're tying together. Now, when we followed Azor Ahai's path into the Grove of Ash, which is, of course, a euphemism for the Weirwood Net, we made another discovery. Nissa Nissa was already there waiting for us. Thus was the Weirwood Goddess series born. Nissa Nissa, it seems, is some sort of elf woman tied to the Weirwoods. Almost certainly a human child of the forest hybrid, or a straight-up child of the forest. Or heck, maybe the green men have green women who are taller and more to Azor's liking. Anywho, it seems that when Azor Ahai sacrificed Nissa Nissa in some sort of magic ritual, she went into the Weirwoods first. And not only that, I believe that the indications point to her being the person that opened up the Weirwood Net for the Green Seers to inhabit in the first place. Nissa Nissa's symbolism has led us to describe her as the Weirwood Goddess, and this is an archetype that seems to be played by all the fiery Nissa Nissa characters, almost too many to count off quickly. In fact, definitely too many to count off quickly. Nissa Nissa is basically analogous to the Weirwood tree itself, and here I believe the symbolism is actually fairly literal. The Weirwood Net seems to be, I would say that the Weirwood Net is Nissa Nissa in some sense, almost as if her mind merging with the Weirwood tree consciousness is what created the, quote, Weirwood Net as we know it today. And every green seer is sort of living inside the mind of Nissa Nissa. Or something. As I like to say, something along those lines, because we're sort of getting closer to the frontier of what I've already explored a bit and feel I understand with some degree of confidence. I mean, not that close. I do have lots of notes for episodes to come. But as I start this series, I have serious central questions that I do not currently know the answers to, and that I hope to discover in the process of writing and researching these episodes and hashing things out with the Twitteros crew. Hey, Twitteros crew. I'll introduce a couple of those to you today, a couple of those questions, that is, that I don't know the answers to. And I'll introduce those. Boy, I screwed that sentence up. So today, introducing questions for you, answers not having. It's happening. Anyways, I will say this right off the bat. A lot of the mystery has to do with people going into and out of the Weirwood Net. We've caught Azor Ahai and Nissa Nissa both going in there, and we've begun to see that the others probably come out of there, something that we still need to talk about more. Just as Nissa Nissa seems linked to the Weirwoods, Night's Queen... Night's Queen does too, and say, is there perhaps a connection between Nissa Nissa and Night's Queen? Is Nissa Nissa Night's Queen, or more like, did dead Nissa Nissa become the infamous corpse queen of the Night's King, whom we call Night's Queen? The Weirwood Net seems to be a sort of underworld, and it seems to be a potential vehicle for transformation, so that could be a thing. Thus, we've reached the central topic of signs and portals, the idea of the Weirwood Net as a door, and everything that goes along with that. The means by which that door is created, used, abused, and perhaps even shut for good. Who goes in and out? What happens to them as they do? Most importantly, what's it like inside? Are people stuck in there? And if so, who? Are there rescue missions? Battles going on in there? Is it all one place, or are there sections? But I get ahead of myself. I think you lords and ladies get the idea. So, with all that said, this is still the Sansa Vale episode, or at least this one and the next one, and probably the one after that. And as I said at the beginning, one of the reasons I held off on all the eerie stuff is because it has so much of it has to do with the portal symbolism. And I just wasn't quite ready to talk about it yet. We're going to approach the Eyrie and the Vale as an ice moon symbol, because that's clearly what it is. And it's basically the only ice moon symbol place we haven't been to yet. But the portal stuff is going to begin creeping in pretty fast. Actually, right at the beginning. The Eyrie seems to be all about the Ice Moon, with a special emphasis on doors, entrances, and exits. And yes, we're going to talk about the Moon Door, of course. It's made of weirwood after all, and it turns people into moon meteors. So I'd like to stop and say my thank yous here. Thanks, first of all, to Maester Merry, my friend from like I said, from real life, and also the Twitteros. And thanks to Stanley Black for the powerful as ever introduction music. Thanks to John Walsh for our flamenco guitar music, which you'll be hearing shortly. And thanks to George R.R. Martin for writing the books. Thanks most of all to you who've chosen to support mythical astronomy on Patreon, like Mary has. Thank you, Mary, longtime patron. It really does mean a lot when someone new throws down to keep the lights on and the fires burning in the hearth. So what I'm trying to say is you all are my light bringers. The wind between my wings, beneath my wings, and between my wings. The wind is everywhere around me, and I'm flying, and you are making me fly. Did you ever know that you're my hero? Anyways, sorry, I couldn't help myself. Shameless. You're allowed to laugh, by the way. You don't have to stifle your snickers there, Mary. You can guffaw loudly. It's fine.
I feel like my church giggles will be very awkward, but now that you've given me permission.
I've given you permission. You are the wind beneath my wings.
That's pretty
all right, so we have actually had a nice wave of new Patreons signing up since Con of Thrones. And also, I think some have found me from my recent appearances on certain podcasts of notoriety who are not podcasts. So thanks, guys. Jeff and Emmett. So you'll be hearing some new nicknames today. In fact, I'd like to take this moment to welcome our new Guardian of the Galaxy patron, Katharina of the Many Tongues, the Twin Claw, Righteous Sword of the Small Folk, and Earthly Avatar of Heavenly House Gemini. Thank you, Katharina. If you want to check out our Patreon campaign and get yourself a cool nickname and even early access to the scripted episodes, just go to lucifermeanslightbringer.com and click the Patreon tab, or search for Lucifer Means blah, 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 blah on Patreon. I mean, that's why I use LML, because the whole thing's kind of long to say. So thanks, everyone, and let's do this. And let me also say that, my $10 and above patrons are the ones who get the early access, and you guys have had these scripts for like 4 days now, so you know what's up already. And speaking of scripts, some of you have mentioned that you do like to read and listen at the same time. And so what I have actually done is I have just published the script for Veil of Frozen Tears, and I'm dropping the link to it in the chat. I have not integrated it into my whole menu system, so you can't find it by going to lucifermeanslightbringer.com. You will have to click on the link in the chat, or you could do some very creative web searching and probably find it. So there you go, guys. All right, so we're getting ready to start our first section. Maester Merry, how am I doing so far?
You're doing excellent. I would giggle more, but I feel like I don't want to mess up your mojo. It's a very good mojo right now.
Okay, well, giggle away if you feel the need, but I'm sure I'll just have to keep getting funnier and funnier until I yank it out of you. How about that? All right. Yes, mandatory vitamin water appearance. Absolutely. Yes, one day they'll hear about me and they'll hook me up. And then I'll appear. I'll have like a wall of vitamin waters, and I'll live stream in front of like a giant, just nothing but yellow vitamin waters. That would be cool. There might even be symbolism there. Frozen piss, right? Weren't we talking about that on Twitter? Oh, yeah. Thanks, Ravenous Reader. We blame everything now on Ravenous Reader. Any sort of, even if other people bring up number 2, symbolism, we just blame Ravenous Reader. So. All right. Time for some flamenco music. Veil of Frozen Tears. This section goes out to Stone Dancer, the Mind's Eye Whirlmaster of the Trident, and Priest of Starry Wisdom Church, as well as Codfish the Steelbender, whose words are, "Under the sea, all metalworkers are codfish." Thanks, guys. two of our new priests of Starry Wisdom Church. Patois. Mark Joseph just became a patron a few days ago and might as well throw a little something your way to make my first live stream podcast. Thanks, Mark. I saw you signed up there. So the nicknames are usually on a few days delay. If you've just signed up in the past week or so, then you'll probably hear your name on the next podcast. But if you've signed up in the past 2 months or so and you're at the $10 level or above, you will definitely hear your name today. And some of our acolytes, which are the $5 tier, I've got something special planned for you on the Q&A live stream next week. That's right. It'll be some sort of musical presentation of Patreon names, as I did it one time before. Sometimes I get to the point where I get a little behind on reading names, because I always, the way our Patreon is structured, the higher tiers get their names read, during the section breaks. But I like to go through the acolytes and get all the acolytes a lot of times with a big musical session, and we've got one of those coming up next week. So make sure to come to the Q&A live stream next week with Sanrixian live drawing as always, and we will be honoring some of our acolytes of Starry Wisdom. So, World Master, that's right. Look up the sigil of House Massey of Stone Dance, and you will see the whirls of RG and B. He's actually, I'll have to add some Roy G. Biv action to his Stone Dancer's nickname next time. All right. So we talked about the Vale and the Eyrie a little bit in the Ice Moon Apocalypse series when we mentioned that the legend of Alyssa's tears and the icy waterfall that first sentence, man. First sentence. Okay, so we have previously talked about the Vale and the Eyrie a little bit in the Ice Moon Apocalypse episode when we mentioned the legend of Alyssa's tears and the icy waterfall that bears her name. And that's actually a terrific place to start understanding the symbolism of the Vale. We compared the icy waterfall named for Alyssa to the icy waterfall in the Frost Fangs that Jon Snow and Corn Halfhand ride through in order to take refuge in a secret cave. It was described as a moonlit curtain of water, and when Jon rides through, quote, the falling water slapped at him with frozen fists, and the shock of the cold seemed to stop Jon's breath. I pointed out this as being clear death foreshadowing language, basically identical to the language describing Vermeer Sixskin's death, where, quote, he felt a shock of cold as if he had been plunged into the icy waters of a frozen lake. And we've talked a bit about how plunging through the waters of an icy lake seems to be a metaphor for an icy death transformation, or perhaps even turning into an other or an ice priestess, such as we believe Night's Queen to be. And we know that makes the... And you know what... So, do you know what that makes? The icy lake and icy waterfall symbols? Portals, that's right. The simple way to say it is that they mark one's entrance into the symbolic realm of the ice moon and the others. When Jon goes through the icy moonlit curtain of waterfall and his breath is stopped, that's what's going on. The cave represents the inside of the ice moon, which also seems to represent the realm of the dead. And so, Jon's death is foreshadowed as he walks through the curtain. He's entering the frozen part of hell, if you will, where the dragon known as Lucifer is imprisoned in his frozen lake. Speaking of Dante, did you know that the beast version of Lucifer trapped in the frozen lake actually has 3 heads, which cry icy tears that actually form the lake and freeze over? I know, 3 heads of the dragon, and icy tears like Alyssa. Poor sad Lucifer, trapped in the cold lake, crying forever. It's okay. He won't stay there forever. Oh, sorry. No weird comments, please. In any case, the point is that this curtain of water is clearly a kind of demarcation between the outside and the inside, between the realm of the living and the realm of the dead. This metaphorical partition or barrier is often referred to as the, quote, Veil of Tears, such as when Davos sees the frozen dragons on Dragonstone stirring as if to wake when Mel and Stannis do their Lightbringer ritual.
They were all afire now, maid and mother, warrior and smith, the crone with her pearl eyes, and the father with his gilded beard. Even the stranger carved to look more animal than human. The old dry wood and countless layers of paint and varnish blazed with a fierce, hungry light. Heat rose shimmering through the chill air. Behind, the gargoyles and stone dragons on the castle walls seemed blurred, as if Davos were seeing them through a veil of tears, or as if the beasts were trembling, stirring.
So hopefully you can see the Veil, V-E-I-L, and Veil, V-A-L-E wordplay that's happening here. The, quote, Vale of Arryn, with its frozen waterfall, in many ways represents a frozen version of the Vale of Tears and everything that lies beyond it. It represents the Ice Moon, as I've said, and therefore it symbolizes the Death Realm, the frozen hell reserved for Starks and Lucifer. The cold place that's beyond the Vale of Tears. Now, although the Vale itself is very nice, it's a lovely, picturesque, fertile valley that even rivals the output of the Reach as far as farming and food and stuff. The symbolism, however, of the Eyrie in particular is as ice cold and blue as the eyes of death, to use a well-known phrase. So this veil and curtain language has been used prominently in another famous Ice Moon location, and you may be thinking of it already.
Finally, he looked north. He saw the walls shining like blue crystal, and his bastard brother Jon sleeping alone in a cold bed, his skin growing pale and hard as the memory of all warmth fled him. And as he looked past the wall, endless rivers of forest cloaked in snow, past the frozen shore and the great blue-white rivers of ice and the dead plains where nothing grew or lived, north and north and north he looked, to the curtain of light at the end of the world, and then beyond that curtain. He looked deep into the heart of winter, and then he cried out, afraid, and the heat of his tears burned on his cheeks. "Now you know," the crow whispered as it sat on his shoulder. "Now you know why you must live." "Why?" Bran said, not understanding, falling. "Because winter is coming."
Excellent. Yes, that was actually not a 420 break. That was a run and grab a cough drop break. Kind of the opposite direction. A little, you might notice the dark circles under my eyes. Truth be told, I have not slept this week. I've been working crazy hard and working hard on the script. I was up till 2 last night. So yes, you guys are getting a slightly tired, but still enthusiastic LML. And I will be relying on cough drops just a little bit. So speaking of cough drop, that was the cough button. All right. So it's the great curtain of light that guards the heart of winter. We've talked about that before. It's the Aurora Borealis, aka the dawn of the north, which is what Aurora Borealis means. Beyond that curtain is the heart of winter, symbolically the heart of the ice moon, where something truly terrible lies. Haven't you always wondered what Bran saw there that was so terrifying? Well, what secret lies in the heart of winter? Wouldn't we all like to know? George has said that Tiwau will take us farther north than ever before, so perhaps we'll find out soon. But what if we didn't have to wait that long? Well, through symbolism, we can go where no POV character has yet gone and penetrate the heart of winter, which is in fact what we do every time we look inside an ice moon symbol. Thanks for the encouragement, Sanrixian. I appreciate that. Yes, the 666 super chats are especially encouraging. Very on brand. Thank you. So now, speaking of looking inside ice moon symbols, when we cracked open Winterfell and peered inside, looking for what was in the ice moon, we found the original kings of winter, who surely have some connection to the others, as well as a ton of symbolism about Jon, who is the archetypal king of winter for the main story. And related to Jon, we also found the infamous dragon locked in ice motif, drink, that we seem to find everywhere ice moons are symbolized. We don't have to beat that one to death. I did a whole series about it. We know what the dragon locked in ice is. But we've, found some other things inside the ice moon too when we've looked at other ice moon places. Like, for example, we've found dawn in there. In the cave that Jon and Corrin hid in, we saw a symbol of dawn in the shimmering pale stripe of moonlight that shone through the waterfall and projected onto the sand, which was then followed shortly by a reference to waiting for the dawn. This is yet another piece of evidence supporting the icy origin story for the sword dawn, as is the fact that the wall, another ice moon symbol, is compared to dawn on many occasions, which we've discussed thoroughly. George gave the Aurora Borealis, which again means dawn of the north, a prominent place guarding the heart of winter, almost as if Dawn and the others are a weird version of the Archangel with the flaming sword who guards the entrance to the Garden of Eden. Yeah, I kind of just thought of that one last night. Seems kind of similar. White Harbor is another Ice Moon place, and it has that river called the White Knife, which freezes over when Brandon Ice Eyes comes down during a long, cruel winter. The King's Guards have those snow-white blazons that shine like the dawn, and of course they all bunk together at that lovely and picturesque White Sword Tower, where I'm sure no gay things happen at all ever. Bunch of dudes in a sword tower, just saying. The ambiguously gay King's Guard, perhaps. So you guys get the picture. Dawn is something that comes from the Ice Moon, either symbolically or, as I believe, literally, with the dawn meteor having been chipped off the Ice Moon during the first long night moon disaster, what we think of as the destruction of the, quote, fire moon. A similar message, which is not in conflict at all, would simply be that dawn was forged not at Starfall, but rather in the north, and has some tie to ice magic, Starks, and the others. Returning to Jon walking through the waterfall curtain and into Ice Moon world amidst death foreshadowing, let me make a non-mythical astronomy point. Before I was even thinking about something called an Ice Moon, I read this scene, and at some point was reminded of Bran's vision of the curtain of light around the heart of winter and Jon growing pale and hard at the wall. Both scenes have Jon death foreshadowing, and the moonlit waterfall curtain reminded me of the curtain of light. So I read it and saw it as foreshadowing of Jon going beyond the curtain of light and into the heart of winter, which is something that I can definitely see happening. But now I understand that the Ice Moon is kind of an overarching symbol which ties multiple things together. The heart of winter, yes, but also the very idea of a death realm, which is linked to the others. And so Jon walking through that moon waterfall now takes on many new layers of meaning and import. And now we turn our attention to the Vale of Arryn, a giant ice moon symbol with a sometimes frozen waterfall, and the name Vale. The frozen waterfall is seen as a flow of cold tears even. So it really is a very obvious Vale of Tears symbol, one clearly anchored to ice moon symbolism. Alyssa herself is dead, so we can even think of the tears as coming to us from the other side, if you will. The tears are Ice Moon meteor symbols, of course. So again, this is kind of just like saying that Ice Moon meteors come from the Ice Moon. However, the Ice Moon is a death realm, and so Alyssa's restless ghost cries her tears from the other side of the Vale of Tears. Fun stuff. The others are the most important earthly symbol of an icy moon meteor, of course, and they can indeed be considered to be coming from beyond the Vale of Tears as well. George's original draft letter pitching a Game of Thrones to his publisher called the others the Neverborn, which seems to hint at our theory about Night's Queen somehow turning her babies, or perhaps pregnancies, we might say, into white shadows, much in the same way that Melisandre takes Stannis' seed and births black shadows. These seeds, or potential children of Stannis, are never born, really. Instead, it seems like their life energy is converted into the shadow baby, or you might say harvested to make the shadow baby. I think that Night's Queen and King making others probably works something like this too, in all likelihood. Whatever the details of other creation, which is a mystery that we are making gradual progress on and which I hope to eventually solve, I think it's indisputable that although the others are not dead like whites, they aren't quite alive in the usual sense either, as their stated mission per George is to, quote, ride down on the winds of winter and extinguish everything that we would call life. Now, it's not their exact state of animation that I'm really trying to talk about here, but rather the idea that they have come out of some otherworldly dimension, the frozen death realm I've been speaking of. It starts with their persistent description as shadows. The others are frequently called white shadows or pale shadows or just shadows. There are varying ideas of what a person's shadow can represent, but all of them loosely incorporate, and yes, that's a shadow joke, the idea of a shadow being something less than a full being, something more like a remnant or a ghost, or something called the shadow self, which I won't even begin to take the time to get into. Point being, when George calls them shadows over and over, he's strongly implying them as some sort of interdimensional beings. Tormund calls them shadows with teeth, and then speaks of trying to fight a mist, implying that the others may be able to substantiate and insubstantiate their bodies at will. The fact that they don't break the snow when they walk also implies them as ethereal beings, at least in part or at times. I think the ghost grass that grows around the walls of a shy by the shadow is an excellent reminder about the ghostly nature of the others, and since it's such a gem, let's take it down off the mantle and give it a polish.
Down in the Shadowlands beyond Deshai, they say there are oceans of ghost grass, taller than a man on horseback with stalks as pale as milk glass. It murders all other grass and glows in the dark with the spirits of the damned. The Dothraki claim that someday ghost grass will cover the entire world, and then all life will end.
Wah wah. That gets a sad trumpet, if anything ever does. Sir Jorah, amateur botanist, everyone, and harbinger of doom. Now quit trying to impress 13-year-old girls with botany and legends, Sir Jorah, and find somebody your own age. But that's another topic entirely. Thanks for the info. In any case, we've talked about all this before. The ghost grass looks like a field of dawn swords with tall stalks, or blades, that look like milk glass and glow a bit in the dark. But ghost grass also evokes the others who have bones like milk glass and who indeed want to cover the world and, well, extinguish all life. The pale crystalline swords of the others are also invoked here in this passage about the ghost grass. And once again, we will dust off the quote.
The other slid forward on silent feet. In its hand was a long sword like none that Will had ever seen. No human metal had gone into the forging of that blade. It was alive with moonlight, translucent, a shard of crystal so thin that it seemed to almost vanish when seen edge on. There was a faint blue shimmer to the thing, a ghost light that played around its edges, and somehow Will knew that it was sharper than any razor.
Okay, I'm going to actually pause the script here and take a breakout for tinfoil. Mary, I noticed something. This is one of these wordplay things that is teasing my brain, and I don't know if it's intended or not, but so they're talking about this sword, right?
Where my tinfoil from? Okay, continue.
What is this here? This is
my tinfoil crown, you know. It's like a tinfoil hat, but more medievally appropriate. It's time period appropriate.
I love that you have that. That is wonderful. So the blades seem to vanish when seen edge on. Edge on. Edge on Targaryen. Because Aegon, if you take the G and pronounce it with a J, it's edge on. And here we have the sword of the others, edge on. And it's also sharper than any razor, which is a description that is hung on Valyrian steel. And oh, by the way, razor, take off the R, and you have Azor or Azor. So you've got edge on, sharper than any Azor, right here in the prologue. Yeah. Nice. Make of that what you will, Twitteros. Anyways, so these ice swords of the others are alive. Oh, you can take off your tinfoil now. Okay, you did already.
We're good, yeah.
All right, we're clear. We're clear. Tinfoil free zone now. These ice swords of the others are, quote, alive with moonlight, which evokes dawn's alive with light. And they also have blue ghost light playing around their edges. Other times they are referred to as pale swords, which recalls the tower at Starfall named after Dawn, which is the pale stone sword. We know what the deal is here, basically. Although Dawn doesn't seem to be a literal sword of another. Down, tinfoil, down. Dawn and the others are both symbols of ice moon meteors, and they, of course, share all the same symbolism. And some of that symbolism alludes to ghosts, the ghost light of the other swords and that of the ghost grass. All that lines up perfectly with the idea of the inside of the ice moon, representing a kind of icy death realm beyond the Vale of Tears, and of things which come out of the ice moon symbols as being ghostly, undead, or resurrected. You may also recall that the King's Guard, with their snow-white armor and pale shadow and white shadow descriptions, serve as terrific A+ super awesome symbolic stand-ins for the others. You may recall this line from a Game of Thrones, which we discussed in Moons of Ice and Fire 2, dawn of the others.
Sir Boros Blount guarded the edge of the bridge with white steel armor ghostly in the moonlight. The shortest quotes, they're the hardest to read, seriously.
Yeah, George does whip out some tongue twisters here and there. I've had a lot of people that said they didn't notice it until they're rereading the quotes for some sort of production. And it's like, damn, dude. He does all the alliteration too. But
this isn't even a hard one, but somehow white and wit. Anyway, yeah.
So, at the risk of being blunt, I say to you that the others are like weird, icy ghosts of some sort. They're people from beyond the Vale of Tears, and their tears and veils are all made of ice. Another version of the icy waterfall is, of course, the frozen pond, lake, or river, and fittingly, the others can also be seen to be coming out of this frozen lake. Their voices are, famously, like the cracking of ice on a winter lake, and that's so they can get out of the lake, of course. The frozen Lucifer in the ninth circle of hell imagery really hits home here. If the others are the children of Azor Ahai turned Night's King, as I propose, then we can see Azor Ahai as Lucifer, which we do already, and the others as his progeny, escaping their frozen prison to fight the last battle. See? I told you Lucifer wasn't stuck there forever. Don't cry, buddy. Chin up. The others are coming. So just to put a bow on that, consider the wall. That was where you're supposed to laugh. Mary, come on.
I have a crying baby. There's a crying baby. That's my excuse. I was distracted.
All right, cool. So it's a way of papering over my not funny jokes. It's by trying to go back and okay. So
and
just to put
and if I'm not paying enough attention, I'm gonna blame a crying baby. So we all got our things.
Is it your crying baby?
It's my crying baby. My husband has it handled, but mom brain. So yeah.
So well, just watch out for renegade Night's Watchman trying to steal your baby and rescue it before it's turned into another. That's a thing. So
constant paranoia about that. I have nightmares all the time, and it's Sam features prominently in my nightmares. To be honest. Yeah,
that's understandable, and actually that brings up a good point. Night's Queen characters do sometimes worry about this. Gilly's baby was taken from her. And what is Lysa Tully? Her whole plot starts out with her being afraid of everyone trying to take Sweet Robin from her. And this is all about Night's Queen being her having her baby stolen. So it's a thing. Watch out, Maester Merry. If you have to run all of a sudden, we'll know what's going on. So just to put a bow on that, consider the wall, which we know is described as a frozen river and a frozen stream. It works just like all the other frozen Vale of Tears symbols, marking the barrier between the end of the world and beyond the end of the world, as John says repeatedly in the first books. And by the way, I found yet another end of the world wall quote that I somehow missed. I don't even need to pull it because I think you guys got the point by now. But yeah, there's a lot of them. End of the world, people. It's coming. # Ice Moon Apocalypse. So when you think about the wall being a barrier between, the end of the world and beyond the end of the world, the phrase curtain wall leaps to mind, like a curtain wall of a castle, and leaves us with the impression of the wall as an icy curtain, which it is. You can also imagine the wall as the surface of the icy lake, with everything north of the wall belonging to the others and thus being under the lake. In order for them to come out of the lake, they'll have to break through the ice, which means breaking through the wall, and that's exactly what we expect them to do anyway. Now, when the wall melts, people say that it weeps, and so we can really see it as an analog to the cold waterfall of Alyssa's tears. Think about it. If the wall weeps when it melts, then it can be said to be made of frozen tears, just like the frozen waterfall. And the wall will melt eventually, or likely it will do some combination of shattering and melting when the others invade. They will be coming through the frozen Vale of Tears and into the land of the living. Maybe they'll use a portal. This will be a perfect union of symbolism and event. The wall symbolizes the frozen Vale of Tears, from which the spirits of the others come, in a sort of metaphorical sense, but the wall is also a literal curtain of ice, implied as frozen tears, which will need to break or melt in order for the others to invade Westeros. So you'll have to forgive me for harping on this, but I just love this kind of stuff. It's great. The union of literal and metaphorical. So This apocalyptic melting of the wall is, of course, a parallel to the idea of Elizabeth's tears one day reaching the ground, something which may only happen with an avalanche-style disaster involving the giant's lance. Still, it's the symbolism which is important here, of course, and the point. And at this point, I hope you can start. Okay, sorry. Still, it's the symbolism which is important here, and at this point, I hope you can start to see how amazing a symbol Alyssa's tears are, and that the name Vale of Erin indicates that this icy waterfall / Vale of Frozen Tears symbol is, in fact, central to what's going on here. Thus, the waterfall is emblematic of the Vale as a whole, and since it serves as the symbolic entrance and exit, which you might call a portal, to the icy realm of the others, I figured we'd use it as our entry path as well. And so in we go. All right, section break time. How'd you like that section, Maester Merry?
I thought it was great, and as it ended, I wanted to say mush, 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 and I was imagining being on a sled, like on the Iditarod, with a bunch of dire wolves pulling me forward into the snow, which that's a really great mental image that I hope everyone else is conjuring up.
Paging Sanrixian to the front desk. We've got a t-shirt design for you. Sanrixian to the front desk. Thank you. That will surely make an appearance next week on the Q&A live stream.
But this is great. I love that we're finally getting to the portal business. I think this is something you've been building up to for a really long time, and that a bunch of us are really interested to hear more about.
Yes, you've got to get from one place to the other, and there's all kinds of magic in between, and that's the sort of thing we like.
Indeed.
Yes, and portals are everywhere, as I said. Yeah, it's really the thing which is going to allow us to start to understand the next level of what the Weirwoods are actually doing in the story. So, Mary has to be on the Q&A, right? Yes, of course. Maester Merry, I was going to, of course, invite you to join Sanrixie and I on the Q&A live stream next week if you're available.
I believe I am. That sounds delightful.
Awesome.
Also, by the way, in the chat, all of Twitterus would like to be collected from the Shame Cube.
I need to put a door in that sucker.
I think so.
It needs a door so people can get in and out. Yes, you're all let out of the Shame Cube for today. It's only a temporary thing. It's like, I mean, it's like a cardboard box. You can really just lift it up whenever you want. So you can just get out anytime.
It's like the cone of shame, but unlike dogs, we have opposable thumbs, so you can take it off.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally. Yeah.
There you go.
I've heard there's like Wi-Fi in there, and I've heard that it needs ventilation. That Colin went in there and it got a little stinky, a little ripe. So yeah, I've never been in there. I wouldn't know. That's true. I only throw others into the Shame Cube. I do not go in myself. I am Lucifer.
Sandra might put you in there, or Stephen Stark might put you in there for that whole Aegon thing. So.
Okay, no, that's fair. That's totally Shame Cube worthy. So that was me doing my impression of Shame Cubery.
Shame Cubery, I see.
All right, so let me cue up the flamenco. Lysa likes the giant's lance a lot. This next section is dedicated to two of our new high priests of starry wisdom. Lady Silverwing, the last child of the forest, keeper of all leeward shores, and John, called Saint Baptiste, apprentice of satyrs, cupbearer of leopards, and the thief of sometimes. Thanks, guys. A Shame Cube portal. Yes, that's what we need. That's what I was getting at, Amanda. That's exactly where I was going. Showering is futile. Yeah, I hear it's pretty hot over there in Europe, despite the fact that you have the same latitude as Canada. That's ocean currents for you. All right. So, as Ice Moon symbols go, the Eyrie is by far the easiest to identify. Lunar symbolism is everywhere. House Arryn has a moon in their sigil. They have that famous moon door in case any moon maidens need to make a quick exit. They've got a place called the Gates of the Moon, a nearby mountain range called the Mountains of the Moon. There's Sir Hugh of the Vale with his sky blue cloak bordered in crescent moons, and we can't help but notice that Lysa's favorite jewelry usually involves moonstones. She likes to pair the moonstones with sapphires, actually, which is the other part of the symbolic equation here at the Eyrie. Ice and the others. House Arryn's cream-colored moon and falcon appears on a field of sky blue, and they are really quite dogmatic about that color pairing, like really dogmatic. The Eyrie is a castle built of snow-white marble, and it was built high up on the shoulder of a snow-covered mountain. Even more vivid is this description of the Eyrie from A Feast for Crows, which comes as Sansa is descending from the Eyrie in the winch bucket.
The sky cells on the lower levels made the castle look something like a honeycomb from below. A honeycomb made of ice, Elaine thought. A castle made of snow. She could hear the wind whistling around the bucket.
Now, we're going to talk more about both honeycombs and Sansa's iconic snow castle building scene down the line, but let's stick with the basics for now. The Eyrie is an ice castle, dripping with lunar symbolism. At least when it melts, it drips. In other words, this isn't exactly what you call a riddle here. Blue and white, moons and snow. That's what you find here. But of course, it goes a lot deeper than that. Those of us who have spent time studying the others and everything else related to ice magic and the symbols of the others and ice magic, as we have done through the Moons of Ice and Fire and Blood of the Others series, will start to recognize all the familiar ice symbolism keywords and motifs as soon as we have a look around. We've already had a glimpse, of course. I've given you a couple of great quotes from the Eyrie in previous episodes, such as this one that we quoted in Moons 3, Visenya Draconis.
When her uncle saw that she had stopped, he moved his horse closer and pointed. It's there, beside Alyssa's tears. All you can see from here is a flash of white every now and then, if you look hard and if the sun hits the walls just right. 7 towers, Ned had told her, like white daggers thrust into the belly of the sky, so high you can stand on the parapets and look down on the clouds.
Gods, Ned! It's almost like you were standing on the moon from the sound of it. Not only do you look down on the clouds from the Eyrie, but also on a castle called Sky. You're looking down at the sky, get it? Because the Eyrie represents the moon, and it's armed with huge white daggers. From the ground, the Eyrie appears to be right next to Alyssa's tears, implying the Eyrie as an ice moon symbol from which Alyssa's icy tears flow. And of course, they have that white marble statue of Alyssa right in the Godswood up there. That all fits. The tears are icy moon meteors, and they come from ice moon symbols like the Eyrie or Alyssa herself. That same symbolic idea is presented by the 7 marble towers that look like white daggers thrusting into the belly of the sky. The dagger towers point upwards at the sky, of course, but if this were a moon, the white daggers would thrust into the belly of the sky by falling from space. Once again, excuse me, that one snuck up on me. Once again, we see the purpose of placing a castle called Sky below the Eyrie, as we can imagine the white dagger towers pointing down at Castle Sky and thus at the ground. White daggers are obvious ice moon meteor symbols, as we know, invoking dawn, the pale swords of the others, the white knife, which freezes hard sometimes, and the wall, which is like a snake and a sword and shines alive with light, but also like a frozen river. The ice moon is locked and loaded, in other words. Kat also describes these 7 white towers of the Eyrie as 7 slender white towers bunched as tightly as arrows in a quiver on the shoulder of the great mountain, which makes the mountain sound like a giant with a quiver of white arrows. The white towers also gain an extra icy dimension when we compare them to the 7 crystal towers of the Sept of Baelor, another ice moon location. The Eyrie's white towers are like white knives, so the crystal towers might be like crystal knives. And of course, the warrior sons who live in the Sept of Baelor have a sigil with a crystal sword on a field of black, as I love to mention. The others have long swords that appear to be razor-thin shards of crystal when glanced edge on, or when glanced egg on, as we know. So the crystal sword symbolism is overall a very strong tie between the others and the faith, or the symbolism of the faith. The dagger-like white towers of the Eyrie, so intent on stabbing the sky, simply duplicate this symbolism. Later in A Feast for Crows, Sansa inner monologues about an ice storm that transformed the castle into crystal for a fortnight, reinforcing the symbolic link between crystal and ice once again, and implying the Eyrie as an ice castle. Man, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to make it through both podcasts today, I got to say. There's a chance I might have to tap out. Whew. It'd be a shame, but I don't want to, if I break down, I don't want to keep struggling. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. What I'm doing today, basically, guys, is I did the normal thing where I wrote a huge episode. It was way too big. And so I cut it in half, chugs booze. We'll see Sanrixian. This is a singer's trick I learned from my wife. Cognac helps to sort of clear out the cobwebs a little bit. In any case, I wrote a big giant episode. I cut it in half, and I'm doing both of them today, or I'm going to try to, because all the ideas sort of go together and whatnot. But you know how it is. It's always hard to chop these things in half. And yeah, so I'll at least get the first one. If I do have to stop, I'll give you maybe like the first section of the next one, and we'll do the rest next week. But I am going to try to finish, so sort of coming and going here. What can I say? My voice is...
you.
Thank you. Yeah, my voice is just not always solid. Sometimes I just wake up and it's a little congested. I have allergies, so sometimes I get that congestion. And it's no secret I'm a smoker, so there it is. In any case, yes, the Eyrie is an ice castle. So another thing to notice in the previous quote, you can only see the Eyrie, quote, when the sun hits the walls just right. Now, when the ice moon castle drinks the fire of the sun, in other words, just as the Carthene prophecy says that one day the other moon will kiss the sun too, and the dragons will return. This is when you can see the moon from Earth lighting up. We've seen a lot of great symbolism when the sun hits the great ice wall of the north, such as when it becomes alive with light and blazes blue and crystalline, so this seems like similar wordplay here. White ice daggers, drinking the fire of the sun. And of course, we know what happens next. The sun's fire is turned cold.
Sansa walked down the blue silk carpet between rows of fluted pillars slim as lances. The floors and walls of the high hall were made of milk-white marble veined with blue. Shafts of pale daylight slanted down through the narrow arched windows along the eastern wall. Between the windows were torches, mounted in high iron sconces, but none of them was lit. Her footsteps fell softly on the carpet. Outside, the wind blew cold and lonely. Amidst so much white marble, even the sunlight looked chilly somehow, though not half so chilly as her aunt. Lady Lysa had dressed in a gown of cream-colored velvet and a necklace of sapphires and moonstones.
All right, and it has been brought to my attention that it is indeed 4:20 East Coast time, so do what you need to do, guys. As long as you're in a legal state, of course. I would not like to encourage any illegal activity. I, of course, live in California, so everything I do on the live stream is completely legal and above board. And disclaimer is now over. So this quote is one of the best as far as giving you just a general gist of what's going on at the Eyrie, and that's why I pulled it before. The obvious standout is the white marble veined with blue. Of course, that implies blue blood veins, like the blue blood of the others. Color descriptions like milk white and cream are always lunar in symbolic parlance, but can go either way in terms of ice or fire, as we've seen with Melisandre, who's obviously a fire woman, but has skin like milk and cream. And of course, there's even Maester Luwin's mysterious pale red fire milk that he applies to his wound after Shaggy Dog bites him in the crypts. That's not a thing in real life, right, Maester Merry? Fire milk that is red? Have you heard of that?
I hope not.
That sounds nasty, to be honest.
Even the Shaggy Dog bite makes it even worse. Even worse.
Painkiller Jane pipes in here to ask me if Aemon Targaryen, the Dragon Knight, is going to get an honorable mention, as his other name is the Knight of Tears. No, Painkiller Jane. That's not one that I noticed, but that sounds intriguing because Aemon the Dragon Knight is a Kingsguard, so he's an ice dragon guy, and he's the Knight of Tears. So that that's definitely a thing. We'll have to follow up that maybe on the live stream next weekend. I'll make that one of the Q&As. Thanks, Painkiller Jane. And in fact, I've got a Painkiller Jane hat tip coming up a little bit later. But in any case, like I was saying, cream and milk are moon symbols, but they can go either way towards the ice or the fire direction. However, in the High Hall of the Errands, it is clearly a milk and ice pairing, and it's shot through with veins of cold. The statue of Alyssa in the Godswood has it too. It's described as, quote, a weeping woman carved in veined white marble. Then we have Ice Queen Lysa herself with her moonstones and sapphires. The idea that the sunlight is turned chilly in the hall, but that Lysa was even colder, implies Lysa as the coldest thing in the room, almost as if the cold was emanating from her like she was an other. In fact, just a moment later, when Lysa accuses Sansa of kissing Peter, it says,
"The high hall seemed to grow a little colder. The walls and floor and columns might have turned to ice."
So this is standard Night's Queen behavior, which we've seen many times before. I need to switch the screen. There we go. This is standard Night's Queen behavior, which we have seen many times before. It's extremely similar to Alice Karstark's wedding, where she was named Winter's Lady, and the fire shivered and huddled in its ditch as the wind came off the wall as cold as the breath of an ice dragon. This should come as no surprise. And who do you think we'd find here at Chateau Ice Moon? Night's Queen, of course. She's the parallel for the Ice Moon, what with her ice-cold, moon-pale skin and eyes like blue stars. Merry smile for the camera.
I do not live in Chateau Ice Moon, by the way. I live in Houston, Texas, which is pretty much the armpit of the world. So maybe that's why I'm so obsessed with Night's Queen. I'm imagining that I live in Chateau Ice Moon.
So it's the opposite of the dragon locked in ice. You're the ice locked in fire.
No, I mean, that doesn't even imply the sweatiness, right? Like it's like I don't know. It's marshy and swampy. It's like the rainwood. Okay, I think.
Oh man, yeah. It's like a mere swamp.
Exactly. Now that's exactly correct and exactly gross enough.
Yes. We'll leave that one alone. Let's see. Pablo pipes in to say, an alcoholic beverage made from chocolate milk and Dr. McGillicuddy's Fireball whiskey is fire milk. Thanks. All right. Still sounds gross to me, but there it is. Don't think that's what Maester Lewin was thinking of, but who knows? So now we've already done an in-depth study of Lady Catelyn, Lysa's sister, and we've found that her symbolism is very consistent with that of Nissa Nissa throughout her entire life. Lady Stoneheart is a bit more complex, but still runs on fire magic and leads a cult of fire worshippers. So the message remains the same. Cat and Lady Stoneheart are Fire Moon people all the way. Her sister, meanwhile, the traitor Lysa Arryn, decked out in moonstones and sapphires, enthroned in a castle of ice, the coldest thing in the room, well, let's just say that these sisters make an outstanding moon women of ice and fire pairing, very like Visenya and Rhaenys. And by the way, if I could just give a shout out to my own episode, Visenya Draconis, for some reason, Maester Merry, I'm not sure why this is, has less views than all of the other Moons of Ice and Fire episodes that are before and after it. And for a while I thought maybe I didn't tag it properly, but no, for some reason, that one's got fewer views. And not only is that one of my best episodes, but I thought the name Visenya Draconis was really clever and cool. And I'm super upset about this. Maester Merry, what do you think?
I mean, I think it must be some kind of misogyny or something. People don't like Visenya. I don't know. I got no good theories.
Maybe that's it. Maybe if it had been Aegon Draconis, it would have more views.
Or maybe it's a kind of like anti-Valerian naming nomenclature kind of thing. They're like, oh, why does that have this weird Valerian name? That's going to be too complicated for me. I got nothing.
Yeah, well, those of you who have read and enjoyed Visenya Draconis, you're like the cool people who like the first album or like the obscure single that nobody's ever heard of. So yes, if that's your favorite episode, then consider yourself one of those cool people. Anyways, that really was a fun episode. And like I said, I sort of browbeat everyone in the beginning. If you haven't listened to all the scripted episodes, now is the time to go back and catch up, because real quickly, this portal stuff is going to start having you be like, oh, what? Otherwise, so. In any case, we're going to keep on discussing Lysa throughout. But for now, let's continue on with the physical descriptions of the Eyrie. In the longer quote that we just pulled, with the chilly sunlight, there was a line about, quote, rows of fluted pillars slim as lances. And of course, those pillars are made from the blue-veined white marble like everything else. Lance, of course, is a not insignificant word here in the Vale, where we find a giant mountain named the Giant's Lance. And especially here at the Eyrie, which perches high on the slope of the Giant's Lance. So what's all this about a lance? Is this about King Arthur and Lancelot? Well, it's kind of always about King Arthur in a sense, because this is fantasy, but the thing to think of here is actually Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, who very prominently uses a lance to inflict great violence during the tourney of the hand at King's Landing in A Game of Thrones. This scene is one of the most obvious examples of mythical astronomy symbolism in the first book, and many people have messaged me about it over the years. I've never talked about it in a podcast episode before, but now it's finally time. The exact meaning eluded me for a while, until I cracked the secret of the dragon locked in ice metaphor, which is why I held it back until now. Scene begins with Sansa observing her heroes riding straight out of the songs and legends and onto the tourney grounds.
They watch the heroes of 100 songs ride forth, each more fabulous than the last. The 7 knights of the Kingsguard took the field, all but Jaime Lannister, in scaled armor the color of milk, their cloaks as white as the fresh fallen snow. Sure, Sir Jaime wore the white cloak as well, but beneath it he was in shining gold from head to foot, with a lion's head helm and a golden sword. Sir Gregor Clegane, the mountain that rides, thundered past them like an avalanche. Sansa remembered Lord Jan Royce, who had guested at Winterfell 2 years before. His armor is bronze, thousands and thousands of years old, engraved with magic runes that ward him against harm, she whispered to Jane. Septa Mordane pointed out Lord Jason Mallister, in indigo chased with silver, the wings of an eagle on his helm. He had cut down 3 of Rhaegar's bannermen on the trident. The girls giggled over the warrior priest Thoros of Myr, with his flapping red robes and shaven head, until the Septa told them that he had once scaled the walls of Pike with a flaming sword in his hand.
And then they were like, damn, that's pretty fucking impressive. I guess I shouldn't laugh at that guy.
I don't care that he's a drunk. He's got a flaming sword.
Quite frankly, you might have to be a little drunk to attempt that. So now I had Maester Merry read this whole quote because it's quite the all-star cast, as you can see, giving us flaming sword guys and white knights in snow and milk-colored trappings. Sounds like the last battle, quite frankly. I'm sure you noticed Gregor thundering by like an avalanche. An avalanche from the Giant's Lance is, of course, one form of the Ice Moon Apocalypse, foreshadowing, after all. Then when Cat ascends to the Way Castle known as Sky in A Game of Thrones, we get a very rich symbolic talk about avalanches.
The Way Castle called Sky was no more than a high crescent-shaped wall of unmortared stone raised against the side of the mountain. But even the topless towers of Valeria could not have looked more beautiful to Catelyn Stark. Here, at last, the snow crown began. Sky's weathered stones were rimmed with frost, and long spears of ice hung from the slopes above. Dawn was breaking in the east as Maya's stone hallooed for the guards, and the gates opened before them. Inside the walls, there was only a series of ramps and a great tumble of boulders and stones of all sizes. No doubt, it would be the easiest thing in the world to begin an avalanche from here. A mouth yawned in the rock face in front of them.
So, once again, the name of Castle Sky is working to imply a double meaning. An avalanche coming from the sky is another way to describe the ice moon meteor shower that was promised. Indeed, this castle called Sky turns out to be an icy crescent of stone that can easily start avalanches. I mean, this is just screaming out hashtag ice moon apocalypse. The stones are, quote, weathered because the ice moon apocalypse is basically falling stones as weather. The meteor shower, aka storm of sorts. Did someone mention dawn breaking and Valeria? Yeah? Okay, I wasn't the only one who heard that. Oh, and look, icy spears are hanging down. Not sure what those could symbolize. There's also good moon face symbolism as we see a mouth yawning in the rock face and the idea of the snow crown starting here. The icy crescent moon in the sky is the king of winter, and he wears a snow crown as he sits up in the sky, brooding over the apocalypse and counting his giant lances, white arrows, and icy spears, fingers brushing the edges of his white daggers. I mean, you tell me what the foreshadowing is here, because all I see are warnings of the ice moon apocalypse. And I hope you are not playing the drinking game today. Finally, note that Catelyn promptly enters the mouth of the rock face to enter the Eyrie. This effectively implies the Eyrie as the inside of the ice moon, which is exactly right, and it mirrors the scenes with Jon walking into the tunnel beneath the wall being described as being swallowed down the gullet of an ice dragon. Gulp. Now, returning to Gregor Clegane, the moon mountain that rides thundering by like an avalanche, I will point out that even the thundering is important because, after the others shatter Sir Waymar's sword in the prologue of A Game of Thrones, Will, quote, found what was left of the sword a few feet away, the end splintered and twisted like a tree struck by lightning. When Sam fights an other in a storm of swords, it says,
The other's sword gleamed with a faint blue glow. It moved towards Gren, lightning quick, slashing. When the ice blue blade brushed the flames, a screech stabbed Sam's ears as sharp as a needle.
Alrighty, let's see. It makes, of course, a ton of sense to associate the others with lightning because the others are all about the concept of blue fire, cold blue stars, burning cold fire, and of course, real lightning ranges in color from blue to purple. It's a natural fit for the glowing blue swords of the others, so they move with lightning quickness and break swords as lightning does trees. You may also remember the, quote, shock of the cold as Vermeer experienced his real death, which was compared to plunging through an icy lake surface, as well as that same, quote, shock of cold that Jon feels going through the icy waterfall amidst foreshadowing of his death. It's electric, baby. Boogie woogie. And it's also common sense. If you're searching for metaphors and symbols to depict the somewhat weird concept of cold blue fire, then electricity and lightning are the logical things to use. Of course, we can't talk about lightning without thinking about the legend of the Grey King stealing the fire of the gods through a tree set ablaze by the storm god's thunderbolt. And we just saw that the others, when they break a sword, they leave it like a tree struck by lightning. So, I mean, this Grey King myth is directly evoked by the language of the prologue here. And this is right on the money because the Grey King myth seems to refer to Azor Ahai, or one of his kind, possessing the fire of the gods through the burning tree. And of course, I have proposed that fire of the gods was in part then used to create the others when Azor Ahai became Night's king and gave his fiery seed and soul to Night's queen to make the others. Again, according to theories, hypothetically speaking. So to put it simply, the others represent the frozen fire of the gods. And I think that should be an easy concept for y'all to see with everything that we've explored in the last year. We're going to build on this concept as we go. So I thought I'd point it out since Gregor is thundering by like an avalanche in this scene. Think of an ice storm, but also the invasion of the lightning quick others. Sounds bad if you ask me. So now back to the moon mountain that jousts and the main action.
Sandor Clegane and his immense brother, Sir Gregor the Mountain, seemed unstoppable as well, riding down one foe after the next in ferocious style. The most terrifying moment of the day came during Sir Gregor's second joust, when his lance rode up and struck a young knight from the Vale under the gorget with such force that it drove through his throat, killing him instantly. The youth fell not 10 feet from where Sansa was seated. The point of Sir Gregor's lance had snapped off in his neck, and his life's blood flowed out in slow pulses, each weaker than the one before. His armor was shiny new. A bright streak of fire ran down his outstretched arm as the steel caught the light. Then the sun went behind a cloud, and it was gone. His cloak was blue, the color of the sky on a clear summer's day, trimmed with a border of crescent moons. But as his blood seeped into it, the cloth darkened, and the moons turned red, one by one.
Yes, like I said, this is such obvious mythical astronomy. It's in the first book, and I've somehow never talked about it. And a lot of people have asked me, why haven't you talked about this scene? So the answer is because when I don't feel like I fully understand a scene, I tend to put it aside and I write about the things that I understand the best. Because I find if I do that, eventually I'll look back at a scene that I didn't understand before, and all of a sudden it'll make sense. And this is one of those ones where as soon as I got the dragon locked in ice thing, this scene made perfect sense to me. So what is going on here? The poor young knight turns out to be Sir Hugh of the Vale, of course, and it's not hard to see the basics of a giant's lance penetrating a blue moon person and turning his moons bloody. This is definitely mythical astronomy, but it's not a simple Azor Ahai stabs Nissa Nissa thing. Oh no. That's a fire moon incident, as we know, and the victim here is decked out in ice moon symbolism. He's named Hugh of the Vale to clue us in that he represents the Vale as a whole, and therefore the ice moon as a whole. So harken back to Bloodstone Compendium 4. The Mountain versus the Viper and the Hammer of the Waters, which I definitely should have broken into 2 episodes. That one was like 3 hours long. So that episode centered around the famous trial by combat between Sir Gregor and Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper of Dorne. And in that fight, it seemed abundantly clear that Gregor is playing the role of the Fire Moon, with Oberyn as the sun and his jabbing spear as the comet. These mechanics are spelled out many times over in the fight, with my favorite example being when Gregor blocks out the sun right as he's stabbed with the spear, just as the moon, quote, wandered too close to the sun and made an eclipse when it was cracked open by the comet. Now, Gregor's whole deal is basically that he shows us the fire moon transforming into moon meteors, which can be seen as fiery hellhounds. Hence Gregor's shield in the fight, which begins as a white shield with a 7-pointed star of the faith on it, but then reveals itself as the 3 black dogs on yellow beneath, the hellhounds on fire symbolism, which calls out to 3-headed Cerberus. Gregor is always covered in moon rock imagery, from his stone fist helm to the descriptions of him as a stone giant with a face that, quote, might have been hewn from rock, whose voice is, quote, like stone breaking. Of course, his main nickname is the Mountain That Rides, or just the Mountain, which really just makes the point that he represents a flying piece of space rock, a moving mountain. This also clues us into linking Gregor, a giant mountain with a lance, to the giant mountain called the Giant's Lance. But isn't the Giant's Lance an ice moon symbol? Didn't I just say that Eyrie is an ice moon and that Gregor is a fire moon turned moon meteor? Well, again, the dragon locked in ice metaphor solves the riddle, like I was saying. Gregor represents a fire moon meteor which strikes the ice moon and lodges in its ice. That's what the Giant's Lance is too. It's a giant mountain of, quote, dark stone buried in ice and snow. The mountain itself is the dragon meteor locked in ice, just as the tip of Gregor's giant lance breaks off and lodges in the throat of Sir Hugh of the Blue Moons. Ergo, when Gregor rides down Sir Hugh, this is simply the fire moon meteor flying towards the ice moon and striking it. Gregor isn't an ice moon person, but he can trigger avalanches when he embeds his lance in the ice. Sir Hugh's arm lights up momentarily with a bright streak of fire before the clouds hide the sun. I probably don't have to tell you that this seems like a depiction of the streaking fire moon meteor momentarily lighting up the sky before moon blood drowns everything, and the sun is hidden by clouds of dust, ash, and smoke, which caused the darkness of the long night. Better yet, the cloudy sky is mirrored in Hugh's cloak, which begins as, quote, the color of the sky on a clear summer's day, trimmed with a border of crescent moons, but then darkens as the blood seeps in. It's quite literally an image of moon blood darkening the sky, which is exactly what we've been talking about. And thanks for calling VW for sort of pointing out the thing about the cloak, which I somehow was not quite seeing clearly. Thanks, Colin. Also, take note of the Hammer of the Water's signature wounds here. Sir Hugh is pierced in the neck, then his arm appears to be on fire, just like the poor stable boy in the Oberyn and Gregor fight, who lost his arm and then his head to Gregor's rage. The hammer is also said to have struck the arm of Dorne and the neck of Westeros, in case anyone is feeling loopy today and forgot what that's about. And so then comes the crying. The next paragraph, after Sir Hugh's moons turn red one by one, brings us wonderful tear symbolism.
Jane Poole wept so hysterically that Septim Ordain finally took her off to regain her composure. But Sansa sat with her hands folded in her lap, watching with a strange fascination. She had never seen a man die before. She ought to be crying too, she thought, but the tears would not come. Perhaps she had used up all her tears for Lady and Bran. Cue crying.
Yes, sorry, I know I'm correcting heresy in the chat. No, Painkiller Jane. Hugh is not Nissa Nissa. Nissa Nissa is the fire moon. Hugh is the ice moon. That's the whole thing. So Gregor is actually Nissa Nissa, but really he should be seen as like dead Nissa Nissa flying towards the ice moon. And that's the whole thing about Sansa being Nissa Nissa and then going to the Vale, which we're going to talk about. So I'll get to that. In any case, and of course, like I said, there is a question of whether or not Nissa Nissa and Night's Queen are related or the same person or not. This is a mystery that we're going to be diving in pretty much throughout this thing. So I'm not saying yes or no on that, at least not yet. In any case, much like Alyssa, who cannot weep for her dead loved ones, Sansa cannot weep. Sansa will, of course, be going to the Eyrie to play the Ice Moon Queen, so that figures. Now, Jane Poole has even more clear Night's Queen, Ice Queen symbolism, which we've already seen before, with her cold corpse language in A Dance with Dragons, and her house sigil of a circular blue pool on white. There's the icy pond or icy lake. This is the cold symbol, the cold pond symbol paired with the tears, and that brings us right back, of course, to crying Lucifer and the frozen lake in Dante's ninth circle of hell. Of course, icy tears are just ice moon meteor symbols in general, and they should come from ice walls or ice queens, as they do here. And Sir Hugh, wouldn't you know, has some other clues about the others, pun intended, and they come in the form of double entendres using the word others. They come back to back to back when Ned goes to talk to Peter Baelish, looking for people people connected to Jon Arryn, who are still in King's Landing. Littlefinger mentions 4 people, Sir Hugh among them, and Ned says,
His squire? Ned was pleasantly surprised. A man's squire often knew a great deal of his comings and goings. Sir Hugh of the Vale, Littlefinger named him. The king knighted the boy after Lord Arryn's death. I shall send for him, Ned said, and the others.
Yeah, I was actually just reading your comments in the chat, Maester Merry. Yeah, she used up all her tears for Lady and Bran. It's definitely one to make us, the reader, cry a little bit. Very sad, very sad. In any case, Sir Hugh is, of course, an ice moon symbol. So, of course, the others come along with him. Now, 2 pages later, we see it again.
Is there a man in your service that you trust utterly and completely? Yes, said Ned. In that case, I have a delightful palace in Valeria that I would dearly love to sell you, Littlefinger said with a mocking smile. The wiser answer was no, my lord, but be that as it may. Send this paragon of yours to Sir Hugh and the others.
Sir Hugh and the others. Yes, well, Ned actually doesn't need a palace in Valyria because he already has a castle built over one of the furnaces of the world. And it's got gargoyles. And maybe a dragon. Probably not, but maybe. There's one more scene like this, when Ned speaks with Jory Cassell, who is the aforementioned paragon of virtue, about the results of his inquiry.
It sounded as if this boy would be even less use than the others, and he was the last of the 4 Littlefinger had turned up. Jory had spoken to each of them in turn. Sir Hugh had been brusque and uninformative, and arrogant as only a new-made knight can be.
Oh, that yellow vitamin water is so good. Okay, so Sir Hugh definitely runs with the others, I think it's safe to say. There's another even more covert, but more symbolically rich clue, which comes to us in A Feast for Crows, when Brienne recalls the time that several cruel knights secretly made bets as to who could bed her first, those cruel knights. Here's the quote, and it has Brienne, or in it, Brienne is thinking about how Sir Hyle Hunt gave her the great gifts of a finely crafted book of legend, a blue silk plume for her helm, and even trained with her in the yard, which meant the most to Brienne the Blue.
She thought that it was because of him that the others started being courteous. More than courteous. A table of men fought for the place beside her, offering to fill her wine cup or to fetch her sweetbreads. Sir Richard Farrow played love songs on his lute outside her pavilion. Sir Hugh Beesbury brought her a pot of honey as sweet as the maids of Tarth.
Hello. Hello there. It's not the same Sir Hugh, but the Beesbury affiliation makes us think about how the Eyrie is twice described as a white or frozen honeycomb. And look, Sir Hugh is one of the others who started being courteous to Brienne. One of those others even plays a lute for her, echoing Rhaegar and Lyanna. I just love this idea of Brienne as a beautiful knight's queen, whom the others are gathering around to pay homage. That aside, Sir Hugh Beesbury brings Brienne a pot of honey, quote, as sweet as the maids of Tarth. But as we know, Brienne, the maid of Tarth, is a terrific ice moon maiden. So this, once again, is a reference to frozen honey, and thus to the Eyrie, which is a frozen honeycomb, which, of course, means frozen fire of the gods. So upon further analysis, the frozen honeycomb does seem to be another version of the dragon locked in ice idea. The mythological concept of the food of the gods, which is essentially the same thing as the fire of the gods, is often depicted as honey after all. Think of young Zeus being fed the honey sap of the ash tree by the Melii, who are ash tree nymphs or spirits. We've also seen the biblical milk and honey language applied to the weirwood paste and other things that stand in for the weirwood paste, like milk of the poppy or the sweetened ice milk that Pycelle serves Ned. Ergo, honey is basically another form of the fire, power, and wisdom of the gods, which man can consume. And so frozen honey and a frozen honeycomb work very well to depict the idea of the fire of the gods being frozen inside the ice moon. And as we look at scenes from the Eyrie with Lysa and Sweet Robin and Sansa, we'll see honeycombs used many times in very suggestive ways. So the Giant's Lance turns out to be nothing less than the biggest dragon locked in ice symbol of them all. Size-wise, anyways. It's really quite thrilling, as the mechanics of the jousting scene correlate so tightly to the mountain itself, a fire moon mountain that rides and leaves a bit of lance in the ice moon. So Gregor also shows us locked in ice symbolism after he loses his duel with Oberyn, if you think about it, whereupon he's resurrected in some fashion and then locked in the snow-white armor of the Kingsguard. It's super easy to see the symbolism here now that we've understood the Kingsguard status as others' stand-ins. Gregor the Mountain is, once again, exactly the same as the Giant's Lance Mountain, wrapped in the snow armor of the Kingsguard instead of actual snow. So now we can actually make a prediction. Gregor will be involved in some sort of fight against a comet or a dragon person, and we will be treated to avalanche and ice moon apocalypse / ice moon explosion symbolism, and probably some others invading symbolism as well. At the end of the last episode, Ice Moon Apocalypse, we also saw that Martin seems to be applying the, quote, Giant's Awakening symbolism to the impending Ice Moon disaster in the two scenes with Woon Woon. And I expect that to be paralleled with Gregor as well, since he's a giant too. Look for him to smash someone against a wall, or maybe even to be smashed against a wall. I don't know how you do that, though. Maybe someone will knock him off a ledge. That may be one of the only ways to kill him, after all. Just have to crush him. setting them on fire is probably the way to go, but we'll see. So since we've been talking about the Giant's Lance this whole time, it seems like, I don't know, maybe I should show you the one actual description of the mountain itself that we get in the books. I actually saved it for the end of the section on purpose because it will really ring out now after everything we've just discussed. This is the one that describes the Giant's Lance as dark stone, but there's a lot more here.
Looming over them all was the jagged peak called the Giant's Lance, a mountain that even mountains looked up to, its head lost in icy mists 3.5 miles above the valley floor. Over its massive western shoulder flowed the ghost torrent of Alyssa's tears. Even from the distance, Caitlin could make out the shining silver thread, bright against the dark stone.
Hang on, I'm sending a secret back channel message to my Hand of the Dragon. All right, thank you. Yes, a shining silver thread bright against the dark stone. So this is a great quote. Now, when I hear, first of all, when I hear a mountain that even mountains looked up to, I think of Sir Gregor the Mountain looking up at the Giant's Lance Mountain and sort of, liking what he sees and nodding in approval. Now, that's actually not the only Gregor joke that Martin is making here. Notice that, quote, the head of the mountain is lost in icy mists. The head of the mountain is lost. Yes, that's right. Gregor was decapitated. Bran's dream vision of him depicts him as a giant armored in stone with nothing but darkness and blood beneath his visor. So we know that the headless giant thing is important. And hey, look, icy mists and a ghost torrent. Icy mist is specifically an other's phrase, as we pointed out last time. As we pointed out last time, the ghost torrent thing alludes to the Torrentine River at Starfall, and Dany's dreams of I need to start that whole sentence over. So look, we have icy mists and a ghost torrent here. Icy mists is, of course, specifically an other's phrase, and as we pointed out last time, the ghost torrent thing alludes to the Torrentine River at Starfall, as well as Dany's dreams of melting ice-armored warriors and turning the Trident River into a torrent. We've talked about that before. Ho-hum, what have you done for me lately? So, check out the shining silver thread language applied to Alyssa's tears, and now look at this description of the wall, which is 100% analogous to Alyssa's tears, as we discussed in the first section. This is Tyrion in A Game of Thrones, when he climbs up to the top of the wall to have a piss and think about Snarks and Grumpkins a little bit.
He looked off to the east and west, at the wall stretching before him, a vast white road with no beginning and no end, and a dark abyss on either side. West, he decided, for no special reason, and began to walk that way, following the pathway nearest the north edge where the gravel looked the freshest. His bare cheeks were ruddy with the cold. His legs complained more loudly with every step, but Tyrion ignored them. The wind swirled around him, gravel crunched beneath his boots, and while ahead the white ribbon followed the lines of the hills, rising higher and higher until it was lost beneath the western horizon.
Let me just turn my screen back on. Excellent. The wall is an icy white ribbon with a dark abyss on either side, while Alyssa's tears are a sometimes frozen shining silver thread with dark stone on either side. The wall is rising higher and higher into the horizon until it is lost beyond the horizon, while Alyssa's tears are flowing from the shoulder of a giant mountain whose head is lost in icy mists. There's another one of those tongue twisters. So they're very similar descriptions, as you can see, because they are, of course, the same symbol. Threads and ribbons, white surrounded by darkness, disappearing into the sky and the horizon. There's another layer added to the frozen veil of tears concept here too. The wall is like a white road with no beginning and no ending, as if time is frozen. The wall is also described as a frozen river, and you may recall that Bloodraven instructs Bran that, quote, for men, time is a river. We are trapped in its... Oh, let me do my Bloodraven voice. For men, time is a river. We are trapped in its flow, hurtling from past to present, always in the same direction. The lives of trees are different. They root and grow and die in one place, and that river does not move them. There you go. That's my Blood Raven voice. You can only do so much of that. It's like the B.B. King voice. I got the blues so bad. You can't do that very long. In any case, time is a river, and the wall is a river, but it's a frozen river. So what happens when you freeze the river of time? You get some sort of very cold Ouroboros, I think, like Tyrion's concept of the wall as an endless road. A long night can, of course, be thought of as stopping time in a sense because it makes everything stuck on nighttime and winter, with the sun and the springtime never coming. Wow, the others are getting more evil by the minute. Freezing the river of time, coming back through the Vale of Tears. Gods, if they freeze time and then break it, what happens to the timeline? Okay, I'm getting a headache now. Call it a brain freeze. But metaphors aside, we now have a good general concept of what the Eyrie is about and how it works. So let's stop beating around the bush and get to Her Majesty, the Queen of the North, Sansa Stark. Or is it Elaine Stone? All right.
Woo!
That was Signs and Portals #1. Baelor Frozen Tears.
I wanted to comment just like this section, particularly the last section, is such a good example of how good George is at nature imagery in particular. The line that really got me when I was reading it before this podcast was when he talks about looking down on the clouds. It seems like something that's so esoteric, but the modern reader who's probably been in a skyscraper and maybe has looked down on clouds might find that to be really relatable. And there's just a lot of really good examples from the quotes that you pulled of George using this magical sounding language, and yet it's still being something that we can imagine in our minds so well.
Awesome. Yeah. I again, it's like one of those things where the sort of metaphorical aspect and the more literal aspect comes together in this nice synthesis. And all of it flies by you on the first read because you're just sort of taking in the fact that, wow, there's this cool fantasy castle. It's an actual high fantasy thing. You know, this castle built so high up on the mountain that it's ridiculously hard to get to. And you can look down on the clouds and you're just sort of drinking in that visceral fantasy feel. And it's actually just like super loaded with stuff. And that's why you got to read these books like 7 times. Hey, how did we get big Punisher jokes in the chat? Have you been watching this? How did this happen?
I have no idea. There's some.
I got it. Let's not even mention it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ain't heavy. I just crush a lot. Who's crushing? I guess. What's going on? Somebody explain the joke to me. I'm a big fan of 90s pop references, so I gotta get in on this here. But I'm sure somebody will get it. In any case, yes, that was the first episode. So we are 2 hours into this live stream, and I got news for you. The second episode is longer than the one we just read, and I think that a 4-hour live stream probably too much. Probably. So I think what I will do is I'm going to give you, because I promised Sansa and we haven't actually really talked about Sansa, I'm going to give you the first section of the next one, which is kind of like a Sansa intro section. So it'll do well on its own and will sort of, it will tie into everything that we've just read. But I'm actually going to then stop right there and not finish the whole thing because, like I said, that will turn into a 4-hour episode. So I'm going to do the next section, and then we'll see where we're at, maybe do a little bit of Q&A. And then next week will be some sort of hybrid where I will do a bit of scripted episode, and then we'll go to, we'll do some Sanri live drawing and Q&A afterwards. So I think that is the call. What do you think, Maester Merry? I think 4 hours is a bit much.
I think that is a good decision. Knowing knowing that this script in particular is longer than this one, than the one you just completed, and that you are perhaps in need of some vocal rest, I think that this is the right decision.
Probably so, yeah. The one we just did is about 1,100 words, and the one we still have to do is 1,500 words. So, yeah, I took a long, and I also sort of took my time going through there, put in some asides, chatted with you a little bit. I kind of enjoy doing it that way as opposed to slave driving through it. So, yeah, I think this is what we'll do. So I'm actually going to take a quick bathroom break and ask you to work the chat a little bit, maybe take some comments and answer a couple questions, or, Painkiller Jane's in there. She'll got something to read. Be right back.
Sounds good. All right, chat. I hope you guys enjoyed the first section, and I'm going to just scroll through here and see if there's any questions. I like the comment that Stern used to go 4 hours a day. That's a solid comment. Sanri, I'm sorry that the trolls appeared while you were in the bathroom. That seems totally unfair. Stephen Stark wanted me to plug Bravos a little bit more. Yeah, if you guys didn't hear my initial description of my YouTube channel, Up From Under Winterfell, I have been focusing on a series of essays that are about Bravos. The explanation that I gave to LML is, I think, actually a pretty good one. My theory is that, hey, look, the Faceless Men are using a bunch of different artifacts, just like someone like Miri Mazdur is doing, just like someone like maybe Qyburn is doing, or Marwyn the Mage, and they're amalgamating all this magic to create the faces that are in the House of Black and White. So I definitely think that there is some green seer magic going on, but I do not think that they are green seers. So that's how I kind of combine all of that together. I also really agree with this comment about the Bloodraven voice being amazing, and I wanted to bring that back up and say major shout out to LML's Bloodraven voice.
Yes, thank you very much. I've been working on it for about 154 years in this cave. Yes, thank you. Well, technically, he was. I guess he wasn't in the cave the whole time, but yeah.
Yeah, I think if you have anything else to contribute before we get started, LML, I just talked a little bit about Bravos, shouted out some funny comments in the chat.
Yes, and Black-Eyed Lily, longtime patron, is commenting that when I pick this back up next week, I should reread the Sansa section. I will. In fact, what I'm going to do is, when I make the clean podcast version of this one that we just did, I'm only going to go up to this point. So what you're hearing right now, consider it like a sneak preview based on my broken promises from yesterday. So next week, we will start over at the beginning of this next episode. So yeah, there you go. Alrighty. And yes, let's switch over the script to Sansa Locked in Ice. You got that one pulled up? Maester Merry?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. All right. So, you know what we should do? Let's make
the intro.
That's right, the intro.
Lucifer's Lightbringer presents the mythical astronomy of ice and fire. Signs and portals, Part 2. Sansa Locked in Ice. Live podcast featuring special guest Maester Merry.
Except for now, it's a podcast lit. Because it's Sabia. All right. So, Queen in the North! Queen in the North! Queen in the... Okay. It's that time. Hey there, friends. YouTube viewers and podcast listeners, myth heads of all sorts. Welcome to the Sansa at the Eyrie episode, or the first part of it, where we'll spend most of our time talking about Sansa on her way to the Eyrie. Even more teasing. That's right, we all want to build snow castles of symbolism together in the Godswood at dawn. But before we do that, we need to trace out Sansa's symbolic path that took her there. Because, boy, let me tell you, there is some high-powered mythical astronomy and incorporation of world mythology going on with Sansa as she flees from King's Landing and arrives at the Vale. We will take her there, but it's going to require yet another episode to really get into all of her scenes at the Eyrie, and of course we need to compare those to Tyrion and Lysa's scenes at the Eyrie as well. So before we begin, let me just say, Sansa really is one of my favorite characters. I may be biased by Sophie Turner's good looks and charm, or perhaps by her amazing symbolism. Most likely it's a bit of both. Yeah, it's definitely both. But we are, of course, here to talk about her symbolism. Sansa's symbolism, not Sophie Turner's. Anyway, what were we talking about? Sansa, that's right, Sansa. And it's not the first time either. She played a starring role in Moons of Ice and Fire 3, Waves of Night and Moon Blood, where she did amazing Nissa fire moon things at King's Landing. We won't recap all of that, just a little bit of that. But I will say that my personal favorite scene was Sansa balling up her moon blood-soaked sheets and shoving them into the fire at the same time that two Azor Ahai Reborn figures, Stannis and Tyrion, were burning things outside the castle and filling the sky with smoke. This entire scene and the ones connected to it depict Sansa as a fire moon maiden with burning moon blood, culminating with, of course, the Purple Wedding. Then she turns up in the mother of all ice moon symbols, the Eyrie, and spoiler alert, we catch her doing some Night's Queen type of stuff. You can see why it's important to trace out that path, from Nissa and fire moon symbolism to ice moon and Night's Queen symbolism. This series is about portals, after all. So, we're going to our first section, which is called The Sansa Locked in Ice. This section is brought to you by Archmaester Emma, founder of the Maiden Maesters and keeper of the two-headed Sphinx, by the Venus of Astgik, the starry lady of the Dragonstones, by the Orange Man, and by Black-Eyed Lily, the Dark Phoenix, high priests and priestesses of Starry Wisdom Church all. Thanks, guys. Poor Crowfoot's daughter is going to work now. For the night shift in it. Take care, Amanda. Have fun. Thanks for the awesome YouTube videos. All right, so I mentioned that Sansa's Moonblood scene in King's Landing is one of my favorites for symbolism and comedic effect. And I don't mean to make light of it, as it is a very serious matter and an emotional scene for Sansa, as is everything that happens to her in King's Landing while she's being abused by the Lannisters on a daily basis. However, there is something almost Three Stooges-like about how rapidly the scene goes from bad to worse to much worse as Sansa starts out waking from a nightmare to realize that she's experiencing her first menstruation, to cutting out the bloodstain in her sheets, to simply shoving the entire mattress in the fire in desperation. I mean, it's funny in one sense, but at the same time, the desperation and obvious foolishness of trying to burn an entire mattress in a hearth fire underscores the extreme sense of terror and panic that Sansa feels at the thought of bearing Joffrey's children against her will. So there's a lot going on here. And of course, the symbolism is absolutely bonkers. That's really the point I want to make. She's clearly a Nissa fire moon figure, filling the air with smoke and burning her moon blood, thinking about unpleasant couplings with the Solar King. That's really why it's my favorite, of course, the symbolism. And at the same time, this more underrated one gives it a run for its money, I would say. It's especially clever because it's not even in a Sansa chapter, and instead it's actually a great example of a sly writing technique that Martin uses to add more symbolism to a given scene, which is that he has other people talk about it elsewhere. So this following scene is with Arya and Sandor at the Inn of the Crossroads, right before they get into a fight with Polliver and Raff the Sweetling and the Tickler. The Mummers have just given Sandor the news that Joffrey was murdered at the Purple Wedding.
So much for my brave brothers of the Kingsguard. The hound gave a snort of contempt. Who killed him? The imp, it's thought, him and his little wife. What wife? I forgot, you've been hiding under a rock. The northern girl, Winterfell's daughter. We heard that she'd killed the king with a spell and afterwards changed into a wolf with big leather wings like a bat and flew out a tower window. But she left the dwarf behind, and Cersei means to have his head. That's stupid, Arya thought. Sansa only knows songs, not spells, and she'd never marry the imp. The hound sat on the bench closest to the door. His mouth twitched, but only the burned side. She ought to dip him in wildfire and cook him, or tickle him till the moon turns black. He raised his wine cup and drained it straight away.
The moon turns black? Oh my goodness. Imagine such a thing. I included the last bit of the quote for the moon turning black bit because it helps reinforce what's being symbolized here, which is Sansa, the Fire Moon Maiden, symbolically changing into a winged bat wolf and flying out of a tower after the sun-darkening ceremony of the Purple Wedding. This is basically the picture of a fire moon turning into a fire moon meteor, with the winged bat wolf subbing in for a fire-breathing dragon, because that's more suited to Sansa's symbolism. And my good friends Isabel Harper and Sandra from the Twitteros would like me to point out that Sansa's bat wings may reflect her Went heritage via her Tully mother, for what that's worth. And shout out because Isabel Harper is in the chat and makes actually a good observation in the chat, which is that when Sansa burns her moon blood in the hearth fire, there's actually a wordplay going on there with heart fire, because of course Nissa Nissa's heart is set on fire. So got some fiery Heart of Valor stuff going on. Very nice. Thank you. So I'll also point out that the idea of Sansa leaping from the tower, like so many other moon maidens, such as Ashara Dane, actually builds on her thoughts of suicide when she contemplated leaping from a King's Landing tower earlier amidst the worst of Joffrey's abuse. But this time, instead of suicide, it's more like a transformation, as she turns into a flying night creature. I probably don't have to tell you that Ashara might not be dead either. She's living in the neck with her true love, Howland Reed, and going by the name Diana, of course. Shout out to Chloe, aka the Queen of Love and Booty. These two scenes, are amusing, and these two scenes are amusing, but by far the most important Fire Moon action Sansa does at King's Landing is definitely her part in the Purple Wedding. As we've discussed before, the Purple Wedding is a detailed description of the hiding of the face of the sun during the long night. The sun was hidden by clouds of ash, smoke, and debris from the moon meteor impacts, of course, something which we can see as Nissa Nissa, the moon, having her revenge on her murderous husband, Azor Ahai, the Solar King. Sansa is playing Nissa Nissa here, with Joffrey playing the role of Solar King husband, even though technically he broke off the betrothal to Sansa to marry Marjorie. That doesn't matter for symbolism's sake. Joffrey's murder has his bright solar face turning dark purple as he suffocates due to the effects of the poison known as the Strangler, which was, of course, hidden in Sansa's symbolically redonkulous silver hairnet. And yes, it is redonkulous. Ergo, we can see this as just the sort of lunar revenge I was speaking of, where an abused Nissa Nissa figure has her revenge on her abuser. The drama isn't always framed this way, but I've been suggesting Nissa Nissa as an unwilling victim from the start, so it's interesting to see this very abusive and cruel version of the Solar King getting killed specifically for his cruelty, as the Tyrell's motivation to kill Joffrey was specifically to protect Marjorie and maneuver her to marry Tommen instead, who was not an abuser and could be molded to their liking. Big pro when you're looking for husbands, you know? Not being 10 years old, but not being an abuser, rather. Now, as for that redonkulous hairnet, it's really what makes the mythical astronomy uber clear. The poison known as the Strangler comes in the form of dark purple crystals, as we see in Maester Cressen's A Clash of Kings prologue. And I assume that that is why they used a black amethyst hairnet to disguise it, since black amethysts are also very dark purple. Oddly, both the leaf... hang on a second. Oddly, both the leaf that the Strangler is made from and the black amethysts are from Ashai. which can only make us think of dragons, fire magic, greasy black stone, Azor Ahai, and of course, the Amethyst Empress, who may have been Nissa Nissa herself. In fact, I'd say that Sansa wearing the amethyst from Ashai, while acting out Nissa Nissa's revenge at Joffrey's wedding, is actually a strong piece of evidence that Nissa Nissa was the Amethyst Empress, and that she comes from Ashai, which in turn implies that Ashai was indeed the capital of the Great Empire of the Dawn, as I suggested oh so long ago, March of 2015 to be exact. It's also worth noting, yes, I'm not afraid of tooting my own horn at all. You gotta toot your horn, man. It's also, oh man, I think I got to drink again. I think I got to drink again for that one. Tooting my own horn here in front of everyone and Maester Merry. It's disgraceful.
Playing your own drinking game.
Oh, Raven Salix comments that the leaf from Ashai is sort of implied as nameless because Crescent can't remember the name of the leaf, which makes it like the nameless and faceless gods of the Weirwood or something, or maybe even the others. Cool, thanks, Raven. All right, so it is definitely worth noting that those amethysts were, quote, so dark they drank the moonlight, recalling the greasy black stone of Ashai again, which seems to drink the light, as well as Widow's Wail and Oathkeeper, whose dark steel also drinks the sun. More ties to Ashai, dragons, and magic swords, and of course, moon meteor symbols. Of course, moon meteors. I'm serious though, and remember, Ashai and the shadow that hangs over it are, in fact, a model, or at least in theory, I guess I should say, a model for the destroyed and blackened fire moon. This is where the poison that darkened the sun comes from the fallout of the breaking of the fire moon. So the hairnet itself has a bunch of cool mythical astronomy.
It was a hairnet of fine spun silver. The strands so thin and delicate, the net seemed to weigh no more than a breath of air when Sansa took it in her fingers. Small gems were set wherever the two strands crossed. So dark, they drank the moonlight.
Dun, dun, dun. The silver strands are like the lattice of stars and galaxies, I propose, with the gems at the crossing points playing the role of dark stars. Now, I've caught Martin using this lattice word to refer to the cosmic net of stars before, and of course, these ideas originate in Vedic mythology with Indra's net. Very cool thing. And it's so cool that I actually want to go ahead and quote Francis Cook's description of Indra's net from his 1977 book titled Hua Yen Buddhism, The Jewel Net of Indra.
Do you want me to go ahead and get this?
If you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Far away in the heavenly abode of the great god Indra, there is a wonderful net which has been hung by some cunning artificer in such a manner that it stretches out indefinitely in all directions. In accordance with the extravagant tastes of deities, the artificer has hung a single glimmering jewel in each eye of the net. And since the net itself is infinite in dimension, the jewels are infinite in number. There hang the jewels, glittering like stars in the first magnitude, a wonderful sight to behold. If we now arbitrarily select one of these jewels for inspection and look closely at it, we will discover that in its polished surface, there are reflected all the other jewels in the net, infinite in number. Not only that, but each of the jewels reflected in this one jewel is also reflecting all the other jewels, so that there is an infinite reflecting process occurring.
And I always tell you that George's symbolism is fractal, right? So how do you like that? You can really see the specific callouts to Indra's net and Sansa's hairnet, with the eye jewel stars at the crossing points of the lattice. Of course, stars are usually symbolized by diamonds because they're bright, so using a light-drinking gem, like the black amethyst, in the lattice simply implies dark stars. That's not news to us. We've been saying that the exploding moon-sun conjunction effectively becomes a dark star since Bloodstone Compendium 2 or so, I believe it was. And not to sound like Sir Barristan remembering the old days or anything, Megan, Bloodstone Compendium 2, talking about the dark stars. In any case, shout out to Sir Grandfather, Girls Gone Canon. Still, when a red-headed moon maiden wears an Indra's net full of dark stars, think about what's happening here. The dark stars from the moon maiden are darkening the solar king. This is basically the mythical astronomy theory in action, and it's an awfully detailed version of it. The cosmic web of the universe is essentially unraveling to kill the sun for his sin. That's pretty heavy stuff. So the final layer of hairnet symbolism comes from the ghost of Highheart when she sees the dream vision of Sansa at the Purple Wedding. And Maester Merry, I'm actually going to read this one because I do the old people voices. I dreamt of a maid at a feast with purple serpents in her hair, venom dripping from their fangs. And later, I dreamt that maid again, slaying a savage giant in a castle built of snow. All right, there we go. So the Moon Maiden has a nest of poisonous snakes in her kissed by fire hair, and we know what that means. Fiery moon dragons, dark stars coming out of the cosmic web to rain on your parade. We've seen a lot of poison, snake bite, and toxic symbolism applied to black moon meteor symbols, of course. Think of the oily black stone of Yin in Ashai, which seems to be cursed, or Oberyn's sun-tipped spear, or Oberyn's sun spear, tipped with oily black poison. All in all, Sansa's starry Medusa hairnet is some of the most detailed mythical astronomy found anywhere, I would say, and it squarely pegs Sansa as a fire moon, Nissa person at King's Landing. Shout out to Ravenous Reader, the square peg. And Sansa helps kill the sun, of course. So, I mean, this kind of is what it is. Sorry, I was entirely distracted by my unwitting square peg Ravenous Reader thing that I put in this script days ago before I called Ravenous Reader the square peg. So just completely threw me off, but I was amused, so it's worth it. In any case, look, the ghost of Highheart is speaking of Sansa in a castle made of snow. Gosh, that seems like an allusion to the Eyrie, of course, and to her snow castle scene there with Peter as the giant. And it's generally taken as foreshadowing of Sansa serving Peter some well-deserved and long-awaited Stark justice. It's basically the mythical astronomy story of Sansa's transition from King's Landing to the Eyrie. First, she's a maid at a feast with purple serpents in her hair, venom dripping from their fangs, and later, she's slaying a savage giant in a castle built of snow. I've mentioned this before, and it's really fairly simple to understand with everything we've learned already. To put it simply, Sansa is the female version of the dragon locked in ice. That's really it. She starts out as a fire moon person, Nissa person at King's Landing. Then she does a ton of moon combustion and moon blood flood stuff, kills the Sun King and flies away, and then turns into a stone. A land stone. This name change works on a lot of levels and conveys the idea that Sansa is transforming as she leaves King's Landing and goes to the Vale. I mean, she's turning into a stone. A moonstone it would be, of course, and Sansa transforms, she's a moonstone essentially because she's transforming from a whole intact fire moon person to a flying fire moon meteor. She even darkens her hair to chestnut brown, but once she refers to it as Elaine's burnt brown, which works together with her stone moniker to imply her as a former piece of burnt fire moon. That meteor lands in the ice moon symbol of the Vale, just as the dragon locked in ice meteor always does. So there you go. Presto, it's a Sansa locked in ice.
Old snow cloaked the courtyard, and icicles hung down like crystal spears from the terraces and towers. The Eyrie was built of fine white stone, and the winter's mantle made it whiter still. So beautiful, Elaine thought, so impregnable. She could not love this place, no matter how she tried. Even before the guards and serving men had made their descent, the castle had seemed as empty as a tomb, and more so when Peter Baelish was away. No one sang up there, not since Marillion. No one ever laughed too loud. Even the gods were silent. The Eyrie boasted a sept, but no septon, a godswood, but no heart tree. No prayers are answered here, she often thought, though some days she felt so lonely she had to try. Only the wind answered her, sighing endlessly around the 7 slim white towers and rattling the moon door every time it gusted. It will be even worse in winter, she knew. In winter, this will be a cold, white prison.
Burr. That's all I can say is burr. Well, actually, no, I can say a lot more than that. That was, of course, from A Feast for Crows. And as you can see, the Eyrie has the standard prison symbolism of all Ice Moon locations, such as White Harbor with its wolf's den, or the Winterfell, which is a prison and a labyrinth, and the Wall, which has those ice cells. The Eyrie also has what sky cells, and those are, of course, put to good use. To that same effect, you will probably also notice the Eyrie seeming as empty as a tomb. It's a tomb for the Fire Moon Meteor, whether that be incarnated as a dark Azor Ahai reborn person like Jon, or transformed a Nissa Nissa figure like Sansa here. Marillion and Tyrion, both of whom come to the Eyrie, show us male Azor Ahai figures getting... Excuse me. Take that sentence over again. Let's see. Marillion and Tyrion, both of whom come to the Eyrie, show us male Azor Ahai figures getting locked in the icy prison tomb of the Eyrie, and the general astronomy is basically the same. It's the Fire Moon Dragon being locked in the ice. In terms of the Eyrie having no gods and being empty, well, when it gets filled up with a dead goddess, the dead Fire Moon Goddess, so to speak. Sansa isn't dead, of course, but in a way, she is, because she temporarily kills her Sansa Stark identity and becomes Elaine, quote, inside and out, as she repeats to herself several times. Then there's this line, which comes as Sansa is sailing to the Fingers on the way to the Vale.
The wind ran salty fingers through her hair, and Sansa shivered. Even this close to shore, the rolling of the ship made her tummy queasy. She desperately needed a bath and a change of clothes. I must look as haggard as a corpse and smell of vomit. Lord Peter came up beside her, cheerful as ever. Good morrow. The salt air is bracing, don't you think? It always sharpens my appetite. He put a sympathetic arm around her shoulders. Are you quite well? You look so pale.
Yeah, let me just switch the camera back. I love how Peter's like just totally just such a dick. He's like, oh, it's just bracing, don't you think? Oh, you look a little pale. He's like completely...
I want her to have vomited on him. I'm so disappointed that doesn't happen.
Maybe George will be one of those moments where he hears this podcast and then he's like, oh yeah, I should do it that way, and then he rewrites the book, kind of like the Ed Fetch Me a Block thing. That'd be good. Anyways, yes, that I vote for Sansa hurling on Peter. That'd be sweet. So as we can see, Sansa is a pale corpse. She's a fire moon turned to a stone, and she's headed for an icy prison tomb. If you're thinking of the proper name for Night's Queen, which is the Corpse Queen, then you're right on the money, of course. Sansa will indeed be performing Night's Queen symbolism at the Eyrie. Elaine is an Ice Queen name, too. It's similar to Alanis Harlaw, Theon's mother, who has corpse symbolism and Night's Queen symbolism, as well as Alysanne Targaryen, whom we established as an Ice Queen figure in the last episode, Ice Moon Apocalypse. Elaine is also just kind of a flip-flop of the syllables in Lyanna. Elaine, Lyanna. And my good friend from the Twitteros, Sandra points out, I believe it was, actually I think it was Isabel, but she was saying that she got it from the forum somewhere. But in any case, so check this out. This is really clever. Arya takes up the name Cat in Bravos, and Sansa takes up the fake name Elaine. And if you put those together, you get Catelyn, which is Catelyn, their mother. So that's pretty cool. In any case, Elaine is an ice. So Elaine is an Ice Queen name, as you can see. And if you combine that with Stone, then Sansa's new name, Elaine Stone, kind of translates into Ice Moon Stone Queen, or Ice Moon Meteor Queen. As I've said, she does indeed do Night's Queen stuff in a few scenes while at the Eyrie. And this is highly suggestive. It implies that Nissa Nissa, after being killed by Azor Ahai, somehow became the corpse queen of the Night's King, whom we call Night's Queen. That's a huge and exciting topic, and it's one we're going to delve into more as we go along. But I wanted to introduce it to you here today because it's basically one of the central messages that emerges when you study the symbolism of Sansa at the Eyrie. She's unquestionably a Fire Moon Queen at King's Landing, and this is why I went to such great lengths to just sort of beat that into your head, that she's definitely Nissa at King's Landing. And then she goes to the Eyrie and she's doing Night's Queen stuff. So what's that mean? I mean, it implies that Nissa might turn into Night's Queen, or maybe some part of Nissa is used to make Night's Queen, or something weird. I mean, if Night's King was Azor Ahai himself, which I've suggested, then this could even be a weird story about Azor Ahai perhaps trying to raise Nissa from the dead, or finding a way to escape death, or Nissa rather, finding a way to escape death and return to Azor Ahai as Night's Queen. Starts to get pretty dark and strange. I will say that. So since making this discovery, I've noticed that there are some other Nissa Fire Moon Maidens who turn into icy Night's Queen figures. Or said another way, that there are some Fire Moon people who become locked in ice and turn icy. They don't all do that, and I assume that's because not all the Fire Moon meteors landed in the Ice Moon, right? Some of them had to hit the planet or land in the water or something. But of course, some of them do hit the Ice Moon, and some Ice Moon Queens, or some Fire Moon Queens, do turn into Ice Queens. Like, for example, Cersei. She's imprisoned in the Ice Moon Sept of Baelor, so it's literally locked in ice there. But Sansa's where I first noticed the pattern, I guess you could say. And then I started seeing it elsewhere. So we'll talk about some of that in due time. But for now, we're just sort of laying out the broad strokes of Sansa's arc so that we can dive into her chapters at the Eyrie and know what to look for, basically. So as I mentioned, there are 2 chapters leading up to her arrival at the Eyrie. At first, I thought I could cover both chapters in one section on the way to the Snow Castle chapter, but oh no, these 2 chapters are loaded. So by the time I was finished analyzing them and writing about them and trimming away whatever I could, the episode was basically done. And part of that is just because a lot happens on those chapters, and part of it is also because Sansa has some very cool references to external world mythology, like Persephone and Idun and some other ones. And several of those are touched on in those chapters, and so they launch us into a journey of discovery and mythology. So, folks, that is the end of the Sansa intro section. From there, we're going on to deep analysis of those 2 chapters. That was less than 25%, right around 25% of the new of the part 2. So that's what we'll be doing next time. Is we'll do that first section again, and then we'll go through those 2 chapters with Sansa on the way to the Vale, and it's going to be super friggin' awesome. So we're 2.5 hours in. We definitely don't think we want to go another hour and a half. And actually, what I'm going to do is we're going to do a mini Q&A right now. Since I've just given you guys some fun stuff, and we still got a bunch of people, got 116 people hanging out. So we're going to switch over to like a little, maybe, 20 minutes or so of Q&A. We can discuss it with Maester Merry, and I'm going to send the link to one Sanrixian and see if we can get her to jump in too. Sanri, I'm going to send that via Twitter message to you. What do you think there, Maester Merry?
Hail Sansa. Hail Sansa.
Queen in the North.
Queen in the North.
Fuck yeah, dude. That's you can see why I like her symbolism. It's pretty gnarly, huh?
Yeah, Sansa is... So Jon is the most obvious candidate for having tons of symbolism surrounding him. And then the thing that's amazing about Sansa is that she's this non-magical character who has all of this amazing symbolism that is draped all around her. And I think it's just amazing how George has managed to do that.
Great point. Absolutely. That is why it's why I've come to like Sansa. You read through her arc the first time, and you're dealing with the main surface level stuff, which is at first very, Sansa's she's the princess, she's the 13-year-old or whatever, and then it turns into this really gnarly story of a book and a half of abuse at the hands of the Lannisters, which is exquisitely written, but obviously very tense. And then, she goes to the Vale, and we only get a few chapters from her, and the Vale's sort of on the side of the plot. But yeah, then when you go back looking at the symbolism, it goes frigging nuts, and you see what she's got going on. And we've only begun. I did the Indra's hairnet thing this episode, but there's like 3 other really cool references to external mythology coming in the next one. And Sansa really starts lighting up, even though she isn't a magical character. She really pops off the page in terms of symbolism.
Hey.
And we have a Sanrixian.
I'm here.
Nice.
Just painting some Moon Dancer, listening to you guys, so why not pop on?
Very pretty.
Thank you.
I want to say somewhere right above me. No, I can't find it. Earlier today, sitting on my desk was like one of your Quicksilver stickers, Sanri, and I was trying to determine where to put it, and now it's somewhere, but too far away for me to reach at this particular moment.
It has vanished.
It is vanished.
I get it.
Tell us your thoughts on Sansa.
I love Sansa. You guys know this. I'm really excited for this episode. Well, I was really excited for this episode and for the next one. Like, I've been waiting for Lucy to do it for a while, so I love her. I'm excited about it. I definitely think she's the wolf locked in ice. I love that. It's I was thinking about all the titles of Ned and like Brandon and his siblings, like, Brandon the Wild Wolf and Ned the Quiet Wolf. I was like, well, what would be the equivalent for like Sansa and Arya and Bran? What do you think about that?
Nice, good question. Sansa's got to be the Ice Wolf, because there's the Ice Wolf howling in the mountains while she's walking through there. And I think it's the feast when they're leaving the Eyrie, and also Lady's dead, so her spirit is like symbolically on the other side. So yeah, Ice Wolf is my vote. What do you think, Mary?
I like it. I agree. I wanted to comment on something in the chat. Like, some people were just talking a little bit about I don't understand how people can judge what a 12-year-old can stomach. And one of the things I think is really impressive about how Sansa is written, it's not only her symbolism, it's that there's so much emotional weight to what she endures. And a lot of her lines are so deeply resonant, I think, to people that have either been through a lot as children or like later in their adult lives. I was mentioning that line about she didn't have any tears left. She had used them all up on Bran and Lady, and that's just such a gut punch. And I'm really, I'm just really impressed at how well George makes this character who is powerful and at the same moment has these really good moments of vulnerability. And that fits in with her symbolism really well too, right? Which is the other reason that I bring that up. So
yeah, like the whole idea of the dragon locked in ice is that bad boy goes through a lot of abuse and has to sort of hide. And I'm going to mention Jon as an analog to Sansa in the next section. But if you remember, Jon, when he goes north of the wall, he wears the white sheep's wool, which is sort of depicting him as being locked in ice when he's north of the wall. But he keeps his black cloak under his saddle. So it's kind of like that little seed of his identity. Even though he's putting on the sheep's clothing, he's the wolf in sheep's clothing, he still nurtures that little seed. And Sansa's the same way. She's still got that Stark inside of her. And then when she makes the snow castle and steps inside of it, suddenly we see that. And she throws a bunch of snow in Peter's face, you bastard.
And she has a white cloak.
Oh, dude, that whole chapter is bonkers, dude. That might be a whole episode. It's just that chapter.
Yes.
I mean, I've even thought about reading, like doing a read along. Like, we'll read the whole chapter and just stop and make comments as we go, because this is sometimes what I do when I read chapters. And this chapter is almost like you don't even need to cut anything out. Like, every sentence is important. It's so crazy. With
the Snow Castle chapter, then the other chapter that's really good for that is like Bran's. There's some sections of Bran's chapter at the Night Fort that it's the same way. It's like, how could you possibly take any of this out? It's so dense.
A Wayward Bride is like that too. Every single fucking paragraph is amazing. In fact, this is something I probably will do at one point is do like live chapter rereads, but instead of the rereads where like, you know, you come and do the commentary, we'll actually read the chapter together and stop and interject, because I think some of these are so loaded. It's worth it. Yeah, no, Asha is getting a shout out in the next episode. There's a lot of Asha Sansa comparisons that are interesting. So back to the question of what the wolves should be. Miji Cam says Arya is the Death Wolf. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Well, Night Wolf already. She's already labeled Night Wolf, but same thing, Death Wolf. And Bran is, I guess, the Winged Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be the Three-Eyed Wolf. And Jon is also kind of like the Ice Wolf, but like I said, him and Sansa are very similar. So I guess he's the Dragon Wolf or something.
Yeah, he's got to be the Dragon Wolf.
Yeah. Oh, what do you got there, Sanri?
It's Moondancer still. I was painting in the background, and Baela. Or
Baela
however you say her
Targaryen.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely one of my top 5 Targaryens, Baela Targaryen.
And Moondancer is a smaller dragon, so I was trying to depict her like that.
Yeah, totally. Barely big enough to fly, and yet Baela took her up against Sunfire.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, mythical astronomy going on there. We've got the moon dragon and the sun dragon combining in the air, burning each other, and then falling to the ground. I mean, that's...
Yeah, there's going to be some good stuff, I think. I mean, Princess and the Queen is full of amazing stuff, too. Like, all the dragon battles are totally packed with amazing symbolism. But I think for this... this particular theme, Princess and the Queen, is going to be really good. Just because there's so many interesting ice dragons in that story.
Yeah.
Yep, there's a bunch of stuff in Princess and the Queen. I've been dipping into it here and there just because the dragon battles are always, I mean,
crazy.
You know, obvious mythical astronomy going on. You've got the dragons actually flying and burning things. So, you know, what do you expect? So there was a really good question in the chat from Anissa of Ashai. She asks, do I think Lysa's unborn children are symbolic of creating others? And Sweet Robin is a stolen other baby. Yes and yes. Mm-hmm. Lysa had a series of miscarriages. And remember, I talked about the idea of, you know, Mel takes, she gets pregnant from Stannis, but there's not really a human baby born. She somehow takes that seed and fire from him and makes a shadow baby. So Lysa having miscarriages is kind of the same never born idea, you know. And then obviously Sweet Robin, like I mentioned, she's paranoid about people trying to take Sweet Robin away. And Sansa is a female. I've been calling her Deadness Anissa, but really the black meteor that goes to the ice moon can also be called Azor Ahai Reborn. And of course, Ravenous Reader always likes to see Sansa's arc in the Vale as trending towards Azor Ahai Reborn, because she's going to become a more active player. She's going to slay the savage giant in the castle. So, you know, I would still think about her as like Nissa Reborn when she goes back to her like sort of fieriness or whatever, but it's the same thing. So the gender doesn't really matter. Dragons are changeable as flame. So thanks, Laura D, for coming by. Woo!
Yay, Laura.
And thanks for the good question. Painkiller Jane says my favorite part of Sansa that hit home for me was her reaction to the Red Wedding. It was so close to my experience that I had to put the book down and cry into my pillow for a bit. Yeah, you know, we started a thread on Twitter about Sansa moments of awesome, and it went so fast and far, it was ridiculous. And I've been chatting with a couple people. We might actually do a Between Two Weirwoods just on Sansa, because there are so many underrated moments of awesome I didn't even realize, because a lot of them are very subtle. And listed all together, it was really fascinating. So I think maybe there's a Sansa Between Two Weirwoods in the works somewhere.
Yes.
So we can talk about her as a character, not about as a burnt stone that's icy and stuff. So, Sammy, what do we got happening here?
Yeah, what is that adorable bird?
It's a Ravi.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, with her
Earlier.
Nenimone hat.
Yes.
Nice. Oh, that's a perfect expression on her face too.
Oh, I love it.
It's like very pleased, a little self-satisfied, maybe just a touch sanctimonious, but in a friendly way. Yeah, I can see it.
You get it.
I get it. That's really, really captured it there. That's something else. See, Ravenous Reader, this is what happens when you actually come to the live stream. We'll talk about you and feed your ego.
Draw you.
That's right. And what was the request you had earlier, Mary?
Oh, if only I could remember, I would tell you. I don't know.
Sammy, do you remember?
I don't. I'm sorry.
There was a drawing idea.
Yes, I remember.
I'll have to look back through. I'll have to look back through the stream and figure it out.
Yeah, we'll get it. We'll get it for next week.
What was it that you're not talking about the dire wolves on the Iditarod sled?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The direwolves pulling the sled.
Yeah, with Mary, Maester Merry.
Yes, got it.
Got it. Noted. T-shirt 14. Got it.
Does not have to be me. It can be anyone. It's really the dire wolves in the sled that's important.
Yeah, you should actually put all kinds of crazy people on the sled. See how many people can get in there. It'll be like an orgy couch, but an Iditarod sled.
Doing a lot of portraits lately. We're on it. Got it. Okay.
Well, just in due time. I don't mean to,
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Follow your muse.
You are.
It's the Raven with the Nenimone crown. That's right. That's right. Yes, it is. We'll get it to you on Twitter. So.
I've drawn that Raven many times.
Yep, Mark Joseph saying Sansa is my fave. I see her as this girl that had her wolf blood repressed and how she was raised, mostly because of maybe Ned's past trauma in trying to protect her. But throughout her POVs, we see... Oh, and I see it's a two-part comment, and part 2 is still in the works. But I can see where he's going with that thought. Yes, and there's some cool quotes that totally indicate, obviously Sansa hasn't lost her starkness, and that'll be coming back to the fore. There's one quote about her hair where it says, I just re-dyed it this morning because the red was showing at the roots. And it made me think of like Weirwood roots and red hair and stuff. Yeah. And I was like, oh, the Weirwood Goddess is coming back. So this whole Night's Queen Nissa thing is something I've been wondering about for a long time. It's kind of an obvious idea when you start thinking about Night's King and Azor Ahai maybe being parallel, because one guy killed his wife and the other guy has a dead wife. They're both compared to the moon. You're kind of thinking, okay. But then, of course, I have the two moons theory. And even though one piece of one moon goes into the other moon, they were at first separate moons. And so I am, in my heart of hearts, wanting to see two separate women, just like Visenya and Rhaenys, or like Kat and Lysa. But then we have characters that switch from one to the other. So I concocted the whole dragon locked in ice thing to work a way around that and still have two moons, basically. That's the cynical way to say it. But no, I mean, it does say there were two moons in the sky, right, in the first book. So I actually didn't make that up. That's actually right in the myth. But let's see. Painkiller Jane asks, am I going to talk about Sansa as an echo of the Iron Queen, the Flower of the Veil? Thanks for reminding me about that. I am going to talk about that, as well as Ellen Eversweet, because Elaine and Ellen are very similar, and Ellen Eversweet is one of Garth's daughters, has to do with the beehive and all that honeycomb stuff. So Isabel Harper has this topic well researched, and she's got some theories about that. So I'm probably going to chat with her a little bit about the Ellen Eversweet thing, because I know that she's got more advanced observations coming. So I'll be consulting with her about that. Nice. We got some happy looking wolf pups pulling the sled.
They're so cute.
Don't look up there. Don't look in the corner. Mandatory appearance for Colin.
Right. I mean, it's the whole thing about Lightbringer. Like, we've got the obvious candidate for Lightbringer is Dawn. It's a white sword, but all the clues about Azor Ahai's sword imply a black sword, and we've got Valyrian steel swords, which are black swords, and Valyrian steel and Dawn are opposite. So I really think there's two Lightbringer swords, And you can't have a good sword fight without two swords anyway. And same thing with two moons. It says we had two moons. We have ice and fire polarity in the story. And we've got, lots of times, like I said, two moon women. So at the same time, it's like I said, it's all about the internet, or not the internet, the Weirwood net. We got all these people going in, we got people coming out, and it's a mystery as to what's happening in the middle. And that's kind of what we're trying to get at.
I am about to have to bow out because I can hear a very loudly screaming child in in the background. And I know we're kind of about to tail off.
That is that we're about here. I'm going to go about 5 minutes longer and let Sandry finish this drawing here, and I think we'll call it.
That sounds great. Well, I'm gonna bow out now, and I'm not sure what the logistics of that are, but
you just hang up. That's it.
Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna hang up on you guys.
But first, tell everyone again what your YouTube channel is called, and of course, we'll be seeing you back next week. So
yes. Before I hang up on everyone, you can find me on Twitter at Maester Merry. You can find me on YouTube. My channel is Up From Under Winterfell. And if you stumble across me in either of those places, you should also be able to find my website, which is also Up From Under Winterfell. Thank you guys for this lovely stream, and I look forward to hanging out with you guys again next week.
Thank you ever so much for playing Wingman, Mary. You did a great job and brought a lot to this show, and obviously I need help. So thanks for being there like a true. So go ahead and take care of your baby. Make sure no Sam's out there wrestling around.
Exactly. So that's all for now. Have a lovely evening.
Bye.
Bye, Mary.
That was fun.
You guys have been going horde.
Yeah, man. I am crazy. I thought I could do both episodes. I'm insane, dude. I'm insane. Clearly that was like way too much.
You work hard.
I did give you guys some Sansa though, and we got into the Veil and got a lot of new ideas and some new symbolism out there. Although I did say Dragon Locked and Ice a bunch of times. Sorry about that.
We're all drunk. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go take a nap. That's for sure. But hey, I work hard to bring you guys mythical astronomy. There's a lot of people that support me emotionally and financially, and I feel, want to come through for you guys and make you proud. So, tired or not, rain or shine, snow or ice,
ice or fire.
That's right. Ice or fire. Thank you. Snow or ice or derp. Yeah, there it is. So, I'm bringing it to you. How's our Iditarod looking?
It's looking okay. I've gotten a couple questions in the chat there about how I draw. Mijicam, I think I'm saying that right. We've been chatting back and forth in the chat a little bit while you were talking. Cool person. But yeah, I just kind of draw. I don't have any plans for what I'm doing. I can kind of see it in my head, but most of the time I figure it out while I'm drawing to answer that question. Yeah, it's crazy watching people draw, I know. And like usually I'll do something like this where I can like lay something out. Like if I was just going to draw a little wolfy boy over here. Mm-hmm. But when I do this live for people, I think it's much cooler if I just do it without the outlines. So
yeah, it is. It's kind of like magic. Like the thing is just appearing.
Yeah. It's like, what is that? And it's an acquired skill, and I can say everybody can do it. Just lots and lots of practice, basically. So yeah.
I love your little dire wolf faces, dude.
Oh man, they just get more and more adorable. They stop being ferocious beasts to me, and they're just like little puppies now.
And can I see the ravenous Nenimone again one more time? Course. I don't know if we got enough of that. Oh man. Oh god, that is just. I need that as a gift that I can use. At the touch of a button. I mean, that just couldn't be any. You've captured it. We've been talking about a Nenimone and Nenimoning for years without quite being able to say what it is. But I think this drawing does it.
Funny enough, I did start this earlier. I'll see if I can get it to open. Another Ravi Under the Sea, which I animated into a GIF. So we have an official Going Under the Sea GIF, which will be posted on Twitter later today.
Oh, man.
Ravi's just getting spoiled today, isn't she?
Well, when you guys, when we are very close. Some of you guys in the chat know what the under the sea metaphor is about. I've been talking about it on the sides here and there, but when we do the full write-up on the under the sea stuff, which is coming in the Signs and Portals series, you guys will understand why I put up with Ravenous Reader's incessant poking of the dragon, because she is brilliant, and the under the sea discovery is one of the most important discoveries in the history of analysis, in my opinion. And it's going to blow your brains out. Even you guys who are aware of it, you guys have no idea how crazy it is and how much of it there is. And yeah, that's going to be another way that we figure out what all is going on inside the Weirwood net. So Ravenous Reader deserves all the due aplomb and credit, even though she's a little difficult once in a while when she likes to poke the dragon. But we all know about that if you're on Twitter.
We all do that to you every once in a while, don't we?
Well, yeah, some of us, yeah. There's no one quite like Ravenous Reader, but we go way back, so it's cool. Nice. The Nettymone. Well done. I think that will do it then. So, guys, thanks for coming out, everyone. And I'll have the podcast version of this up in a couple days. And next week, we will do another sort of hybrid thing, I guess, where we do podcasts. I'll probably try to get through it a little bit faster. I stopped and paused a lot. I was a little unfocused today. Sorry about that. So we'll go through a little more intentionally, and then we'll have a good at least half-hour Q&A. And yes, thank you for reminding me. Disputed Lands tomorrow. There is a big live stream on Joe Magician's channel with Aziz and I and Amanda from the Disputed Lands. And we're going to be talking about dreams and prophecy and foreshadowing, following up on a couple of the episodes that Amanda, Disputed Lands, and Joe have just made, which are both awesome. I guess I'm assuming you guys know, but the Disputed Lands is a YouTube channel, and Joe Magician is a YouTube channel, and you should go to both of those channels if you have not and check out their awesome videos. And I believe that the live stream tomorrow is either at 3 or 4 Eastern. Amanda, tell me real quick so I can get that out, because I am just living a day at a time right now, man. Day at a time. What time is it? Amanda, tell me. Or somebody that's in there.
I think it's, well, you guys are doing the Eastern time.
Oh, it's 7 Eastern. Okay. 7 Eastern. So 4 Pacific. That's what I was thinking of. 7 o'clock Eastern. We're going to be getting down. So come and check it out, guys. It's going to be fun. And that is, of course, on the Joe Magician YouTube channel. And like I said, Aziz is going to be there too. So it's going to be some serious prophecy talk. And yeah.
Don't say bail to Aziz, or he's just going to go off for an hour.
Oh, well, I'll be there. The thing is, if I'm not there to interrupt or somebody like me, then yes, an Aziz-like person will go on and on and on. But
I'm just giving him a hard time.
I will get in there if I need to and be like, hey, you're filibustering. You're filibustering. Anyways, okay, guys. So 7 o'clock tomorrow on Joe Magician's YouTube channel. See you all there. Thanks for coming. Signs and Portals. That's what we're doing. Peace.
Bye.